All right, good evening. We will now call this meeting to order at 5:30. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's move on to roll call.
Councilmember Hall?
Present.
Councilmember Mazzoni is absent. Councilmember Palfini?
Here.
Councilmember Tavalero? Here. Mayor Parham?
Present.
May I get a motion to excuse Councilmember Mazzoni?
I'll make a motion to excuse Mark Mazzoni.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item number 3, acceptance of agenda and urgency items. Do we have any changes or urgency items for the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remove item G from the consent, from the agenda completely. After discussing it with the city attorney, the MOU has some issues and we're not ready to move forward with that.
Which item was that one?
G of the
G.
consent?
Yes, the
Okay.
grant for a laptop.
All right, any other changes or additions?
Okay.
All right, I will move that we remove item G from consent.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, seeing as there are no other changes, we'll move on to non-agenda public comment. This is a time for anybody in the public that has an item they'd like to make comment on that's not on the agenda, to please come forward. All right, seeing as there is none, we will now move on to council member announcements, meeting reports, and comments. We will start with Councilmember Tavalero.
I don't have anything, I haven't been to any meetings. Transportation meeting got moved to next week. But I did go to the fair last night, and the old engine from the museum is up at the fair in a display of get volunteer firefighters. So if you go through there, you'll see it. That's it.
All right, Councilmember Hall.
Mr. Mayor, I have another report this month.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Palfini.
I'm kind of remiss, but I guess I don't have anything to report either. It must have been a short month. Is it February?
All right, I don't have any reports, but I do have an announcement. First, I'd like to thank the public that's here. Usually it's when we have public hearings that we get public, but I always encourage and appreciate all of our constituency being involved in person at the meetings, as well as I've been approached by people in the public that have let me know that they were part of the 6 or so of you that watch our videos, and I appreciate that. So please continue to participate. One of the changes we made tonight, for those of you that are paying attention to our agendas, is previously when I was first elected a year ago, or almost 2 years ago now, we had a consent agenda that was reviewed in the work session. And although it was open to the public, we very rarely, I think only on one occasion, had people come to that. So one of the things I asked to make a change this month is that those items get presented at the 5:30 meeting, because I think it's important that those people who worked until 5 o'clock or so have an opportunity to come in person and be a part of that versus just watching the video after the fact. It may make the meetings go longer, and I do apologize to staff and my fellow council members if that is the case, but I felt that in transparency, the public should have the opportunity to be present for those and have those discussions. So, all right, and with that, we will move on to the consent agenda as aforementioned. Are there any questions or discussions from the council or on any items on the consent agenda?
You're not gonna go through them one by one?
We can go through them one by one.
No, it's okay. I thought that's what you meant.
Right, and we will go through and read them. So, let me back up and explain a little bit. So the way we went through the consent agenda at the working meetings is that questions were asked and answered of council to staff. And so as I read through these, if there are questions, you know, that come up, I want the public to be present for that, if at all possible, to hear what those are versus after the fact. So the first item is Public Works. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 34-2024, accepting donation of the multi-quit water trailer.
And you got it, and it's wonderful.
Yes, we actually used it the following day.
I know, I saw it.
Item B is administration. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 35-2024, amending its conflict of interest code.
And that's just a,
Yeah,
gotta do it, one of those things?
yeah, this is a regular update, although there were some things that our office found needed to be updated from the last time. But normally you look at these every 2 years. And just as a point of order, consent agenda items are normally considered routine and non-controversial, and they're voted on in a single motion without any discussion. So
Right.
the work session was, those items were not agendized as a consent agenda item, and so there was some discussion. If the council wants to discuss any of these items, we would really have to pull it and then discuss it separately. But the point of the consent agenda is for the council to get through business that's non-controversial without an undue consumption of time. And it does allow the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any item on the consent agenda. And if you have if there's one question or, you know, 2 questions about a consent agenda item, that's fine. But the idea of it is to kind of expedite the meeting process. So it's okay to speak more about them, but just as a point of order, that's sort of the way consent agenda items are normally construed.
Right.
So as we're doing it this way, if a council member wants to remove something as we get to it, we can make that request?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is instead of having a question after each title is read, we just read the titles and then invite anyone who wants to pull something for discussion to do that. And if there aren't any, the public, and then we can vote.
Right.
I wanna pull something now. Can I say it, or I gotta wait till he gets to it?
I would wait until he reads them all, and then
Okay.
I can pull whichever items council members want to pull.
All right, item C, Public Works. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 36-2024, approving an application for a grant agreement and any amendments thereto from the 2023 and/or 2024 funding year of the state CDBG program. Item D on the consent agenda, fire. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 37-2024, surplus of 2014 International Ambulance.
Can I get that pulled? So I can ask some questions on it?
Item E, fire. By motion, council will
I would like to pull that item too. when you're done.
Council will consider authorizing Weed Fire Department accept the U.S. Department of Interior grant award of $35,204.10. Item F, Public Works. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 38-2024, accepting the 2023 Water and Sewer Infrastructure Improvement Project as complete. Item G, we have already pulled and tabled from this agenda. Item H, by motion, approve minutes from July 11th, 2024 regular meeting and July 15th, 2024 adjourned regular meeting. Item I, by motion, approve payment warrants dated 7/25/2024, including any voided warrants totaling $1,067,814.84. And item J, by motion, approve and file month-end report for July 2024. So at this time, we have council members requesting to pull items D and E from consent and moving them onto the regular agenda.
D and E?
Yes.
Did you pull E,
I
Ken?
pulled the,
Oh,
And so those will be placed under council business. And we'll go ahead and put those at the end after item E.
okay, so F and G?
may I ask a question on one of them, Mayor?
Of course.
Hey, Jill, on I, By that number, can I assume we paid for a nice new road someplace?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it was on the water bypass
Yeah.
project. We cut a large check for that, and we should be getting reimbursement hopefully soon.
Good.
Yeah.
That's usually, that number usually says a road. Which roads are good?
Well, water this time, water bypass project.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, normally the removed items from consent go
Oh,
at
yes.
item 7, so we
Yeah, we'll-
discussed it
we'll-
right after this.
We'll move those to item 7.
Okay,
I missed
just to
that.
clarify.
All right, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda minus items D, E, and G,
Public comment.
unless there is any
Any
public
public
comment.
comment? Yeah.
All right,
I'll motion to accept the consent agenda.
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we will continue on with items removed from consent, and we will start with item D from the consent of fire. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 37-2024 surplus of 2014 International Ambulance.
So my question on this is, if this passes, does that have to get sold? Because if something under council business doesn't happen, it won't get sold. So does that mean if we say it's surplus tonight, we have to sell it? Anybody?
That's the way I read the resolution. It would be the city council, the city weed directs the disposal to auction. So that way, the staff would have a mandatory duty based on the council direction to dispose of that property.
Okay, well, that's fine and that's all fine and dandy, but if, B doesn't pass, then there's, no reason to do D on the consent agenda. We can't get rid of that ambulance if we can't do something else in the council business. Am I correct?
That's correct. So we could pull it all
Because
together.
that is one of the only engines that we can have firefighters that don't have their license. That's the only thing they can drive. So if we can't get this, which we're trying to make something for them to drive, we can't sell that. So what do we do on that?
We could table it.
So right now.
You could also move it to later in the agenda if you wanted.
So, and that brings up an important question, I think, for everyone's understanding is, we can only drive the fire engines with Class B operators. What equipment do we currently have in service that can be driven with Class C at this time, other than the ambulance?
Pickup trucks,
And how many of those do we have?
3.
And what equipment does the ambulance have that the pickup trucks do not? Does it have a water tank on board?
It has Jaws Life, has rescue equipment, actually, basically.
Okay.
More than what's on a pickup truck. So it carries all the rescue equipment that they need.
Okay.
Can those be onboarded to the pickup trucks?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Of course.
okay.
Good.
Is there a minimum? With that, we're talking about auctioning, correct?
So a minimum amount is
That we're gonna accept? in the-
50,000
Okay.
would be what I would accept. We'll put it up for 59,000.
So what happens if we never get that offer, though? I don't know what they're worth, so
Well,
I'll just.
have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it, I know what it is.
Then you don't have to accept the offer from the,
Okay.
we put it up for auction and then an auction house sells it for us.
So maybe I would like to make a motion that we move items F and G to
Wait.
item,
I mean, D&E.
D and E?
which one is I'm talking, oh, excuse me, you're right, thank you. Items D and E to item F on council business. That would make more sense as far as us going through, instead of going through this.
Can we put them both on
Issue.
the same one, or do we need to?
No. Why do we need to move E? It's accepting a grant. E is accepting a grant that they.
I understand what
applied
it
for
is,
and
but
getting.
I would tell you, if you're gonna move D, let's move E, because they're both involving fire and all are interrelated.
What's that grant for? Is it something
That's,
specific?
that's
move
the
it.
outfit.
Yes, we should move it.
Okay,
For
it's
council.
for,
Yeah, it's for a pump
okay,
and a tank.
I know, all
We're
right.
going back of a pickup truck.
Yeah, I'm good with moving them both. Are we moving them to E, F, and G, or we're putting them in?
I made a motion to move item D and E to item F as item F under council business.
Okay, I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Back to the beginning here. All right.
Thank you for putting that with us.
Now that we've gone through item 7, excuse me, we'll move on to item 8, which is the public hearing. We've got a couple tonight. So the first one is going to be a public hearing for item A. Council will hold a public hearing to discuss an appeal of the Planning Commission decision from 7/17 from Legacy Sign Company for a sign use permit to construct an off-site digital highway sign at 710 Shastina Drive. So we will go ahead and we'll go into the staff report to be presented for that item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mark Teague. I'm the contract planner for the city. I've been around for a while here at the city, just haven't been here recently. It's my pleasure this evening to talk to you about the appeal of a planning commission decision on the 17th to deny a sign use permit for a highway sign, a digital highway sign, at Solanos on the south end of town. And the crux of the appeal had to do with an interpretation of our sign ordinance that is perhaps not as clear as it should be about how many signs can be located within an area. Highway signs are pretty strictly regulated both by the city and by Caltrans. And in this particular situation, there are already 2 signs, one on either side of the Solano property, that are targeted toward the freeway. This would be a digital sign, as far as I know, the very first highway digital sign in the city of Weed. And because of the interpretation of the code, I don't know that there was a whole lot of discussion about the merits of the sign itself, because the Planning Commission concluded that the sign ordinance was drafted in such a way that only 1 sign could be allowed in that area. Now, there are, of course, already 2 signs in the area, so that interpretation may or may not have been that of previous planning commissions. Staff had gone through the entire staff report and had recommended that the sign was in fact consistent with our sign ordinance until the Planning Commission decided that it wasn't and made the determination thusly. The applicant did appeal the decision, and the applicant is here and I believe has a presentation, which is why I don't have another PowerPoint, because I figured he was going to cover everything. The sign itself is designed to be targeted directly at the highway and not at the surrounding area. It is not the old school signs from the 80s and 90s that we all grew up with that you could see from Venus. This is actually a very professional sign that is auto dimming for the nighttime. It is targeted at a specific radius. That's all in the staff report that you have before you. This is an appeal, and it's a de novo hearing, which means the council can make any decision they like. I've provided 3 potential alternatives for you to look at. One is to deny the appeal and let the Planning Commission stand. And staff would recommend that if we do that, we go back and alter the sign code so it specifically says what the council wants it to say. You can approve the appeal, which would allow the highway sign to be constructed as proposed. The conditions of approval are in your staff report. Or the last would be to provide direction to staff to take it back to the Planning Commission with specific guidance and let that be considered again at the Planning Commission. This does require a public hearing, so we hear from the public and then the council can deliberate. Happy to answer any questions you might have. As I mentioned, the applicant is here and I believe has prepared a presentation for this evening.
All right, thank you for that report. Thank you for that report. This time we will open the public hearing and we'll review the presentation from the project proponent. Can I ask that you turn on the microphone, or is there?
This is better? Okay.
Perfect, thank you. That way people that watch at home can hear.
Of course. My name is Scott Smith, and I'm with Legacy Sign Company. I do have some visuals that might help in aiding the discussion here. Just connect this right here. Well, while that's getting going, I want to thank the community for coming out tonight or today for this discussion. I suppose I'm sort of looking for some possible guidance from council and Mr. Teague in what direction, if any, the city would be interested in going in at this point. Here we go. So after the Planning Commission meeting, it's true, the sign code is a little bit murky, and by no means, when I filed for the appeal, did I want to come across as being somebody that's forceful or trying to push the city or strong-arm the city in a direction that it doesn't want to go in. That's actually the opposite of what I want to do. So I guess I'm proposing two things tonight. And the first would be that, after the Planning Commission meeting, I was very grateful to have kind of an open discussion on the sidewalk out front and discussing, hearing some of the concerns from the community and the community's leaders. And what I heard was all very valid concerns, but there's different ways to go about this sign project. And I think that as far as the city, the community concerns are involved, it would be worth having kind of a roundtable open discussion with some of those community leaders. I'd be happy to come up at any time and just have that open discussion and see if it does make sense.
Can I interrupt you? Jeremy, I don't see that on my screen.
I don't need.
That's not here. Okay.
So basically just to see if it does make sense. If the concerns that the community has, if there's no suitable solutions that I can present, then that's that, and that's the end of it. But I do think that it might be worth having some of those discussions in kind of an open forum. Secondly, I think that some of this stuff was kind of lost in the communication when there was an exiting or departing city staff member, that some of the elements of this project didn't get communicated properly to the current city staff. So part of that is my fault. But I would like to see if the city council would like to explore discussions or just have a willingness to explore this further to see if there would be some way to make this project make sense for the city. So again, there's the kind of the community concerns arm of it, and then also the city benefits that are part of it. Some of the stuff that was going to be involved in the plan, although there was nothing officially proposed to the city by my company, but it was to build a smaller digital sign in front of City Hall here that would be used exclusively for city announcements. And then there was also a secondary sign, and these are just concepts, doesn't have to be this big, it could be smaller. There was a secondary sign that the community college was interested in having on their property, and one of the discussions that was out there was for my company, Legacy Sign Company, to build both of these signs for the city and for the College of the Siskiyous. So if the city is interested in exploring this further, I would certainly be open to kind of seeing if there's any suitable proposals that I could put forth. And then also if the community members would be open to having kind of an open discussion and, putting all of their concerns out on the table and seeing what happens. If there's no suitable solutions, I can accept that. But that's about all I have. If there's any questions for me.
So you had mentioned just now that there was some communication gaps with previous staff. Can you elaborate on that a little more for the council tonight?
Yeah, the city manager, who's no longer with the city, I wasn't sure what was communicated from me or from that person to the rest of the city staff, and it appears after the Planning Commission meeting that there was some kind of gaps that were not communicated.
Okay.
So to elaborate that on a little bit, so when it went to the Planning Commission for approval, there wasn't all the city benefits weren't really mentioned in that the other two signs that would potentially be built for the city and for the community college.
Mr. Mayor, staff was aware during a pre-planning commission meeting. It was advised that that was not within the scope of the review by the city planner. He did not review any other projects, and that they should not be mentioned to the planning commission and to sway them in any way. So staff is fully aware of what had been pre-discussed with former staff, but again, it was not appropriate to bring that up at planning commission within the review of the single sign by planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that may be misconstrued as a quid pro quo to the planning commission to bring that forward. So I think that was the correct course of action there from the city staff. Very interesting information. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we take questions from the community, or?
No.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for your presentation. At this point, we'll move on to testimony from interested parties.
Hi, my name is Dennis Smith. I live at 206 Hidden Meadow Drive. My concern is just addressing the legality of the sign with the sign ordinance. Section 18.24.233 is the one that addresses the highway advertising zone. Specifically states, highway advertising, a sign use permit issued by the Planning Commission shall be required all highway advertising signs. In addition to signs permitted elsewhere in this section, one sign intended to be viewed from highway motorists may be permitted on the property within the following described highway advertising areas, and that's North and South Wade Boulevard, Highway 97, and Shastina Drive in its entirety. And there's where the problem lies with the ordinance. It says one sign. On Shastina Drive, you have Shastina Storage, which has a large metal structure holding 4 signs. Over on the Valentina Chang property that's north of Solano's, you have a metal structure holding 2 signs. So what's it going to be? The proposed sign is going to be a large illuminated, like a large TV screen with 2 separate signs, one facing north, one facing south. And I guess because the ordinance hasn't adequately defined what a highway sign is, you kind of have to default to the word one sign. If I erect a tower with 8 billboards on it, is that one sign? I don't think so. I mean, Merriam-Webster defines a sign as it's a display, such as a letterboard or a configuration of neon tubing used to identify or advertise a place, a business, or a product. It says a display sign, so everything is singular. Yet I understand the sign company wanting to put 4 signs on that structure because they can lease that out to 4 different people. If you're getting $1,000 a month in sign, there's $4,000 as opposed to $1,000. So I really think the letter of the law says you can only have 1 sign. The Planning Commission even stated at the meeting that the Shastina storage sign was illegal. It was, the permit was issued in error. Yet the city hasn't done anything to go back and deal with the non-conforming sign issues. There's section 18.24.237, non-conforming signs. All of those signs don't conform with the sign ordinance. And this was passed in 2013, and the city has done nothing to correct that problem. So at some point, where do you stop? How many more signs do you put in there when it's already illegal? So I'm just asking you to read the law and interpret. I mean, granted, the law needs to be changed, but as it reads right now, I don't see how it can be done. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other people from the community that want to come up and speak?
Hi, Barbara Hegdahl, live at 318 Hidden Meadow Drive in Weed here. So I would just ask the council to ask themselves, what's in it for the city? At the Planning Commission meeting, the Legacy Signs presented the possibility of using this sign as a for public service announcements. But I think we need to realize that this is not a public service that he's presenting. This is a commercial venture that he wants to provide for his company. And so the city or whoever wants a public service announcement is not going to get priority. Somebody's going to pay for advertising, and that's the priority. So, and the city would have no control over what's on that sign. So, and I would also say that right now there are many good methods for alerting the public of emergencies. The Code Red system, CHP, the Caltrans signs that are already up there. I'm not sure that this is another mechanism that the city needs to be notifying the public of any kind of emergency. So I just don't see that there's any positive for the city in this. And again, the negative is more signs, distraction to the driving public. Frankly, we think it would be an eyesore for our community, and we just don't think it's a good way to represent Weed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public that wish to speak at this time?
Yes.
My name's Clint Winger, and I live in Hidden Meadow, but I also own property on South Weed Boulevard. And I'm concerned about how bright this sign is going to be for our tenants, because we have 4 apartments there and all the rest of the houses up and down that street. And, it's going to be kind of right in their face. So that's my concern. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public that would like to speak?
My name's Gary Hines. I live on Hidden Meadow Drive. I just want to say that I'm sitting there, but I'm also in opposition to the sign, just so you know that. And I think all these other people are too. And I just think it would be an eyesore for the community and kind of give us a little Las Vegas look that maybe we don't really want. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? All right, now we will offer up a chance for rebuttal by the project proponent.
Thank you. I just want to say that, as I mentioned, I would like to hold just kind of an open forum with the community members that just came up here and spoke out against the project, or anybody else who would like to attend, just to kind of define what the sign is and what it is not. Because when it comes to things like the brightness of the sign, the aesthetics of the sign, the location appropriateness of the sign, making it look like Las Vegas, stuff like that. Those are all things that we can do to mitigate that. And if the community members feel that these solutions do work, then great. But if they don't work, then, like I said before, that's that, and we don't have to move forward. But it would be, I think, a productive conversation to have.
Okay, do we have a staff response?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only response I have is the decision would hinge on the interpretation of that provision of the code of whether the sign could be there at all. There's no point in putting the applicant through some additional meetings if there's no choice or no chance of having the sign actually built, because the code would be interpreted to not permit it in that location. That would be my only concern. All of the other issues that have been raised, concerns of the community, I think the applicant can certainly address. I was initially concerned about the illumination myself, And there is a report in the staff report that talks about how it's designed specifically to peter out at a certain point. I've also spent the last couple of weeks studying these types of signs where I live in the Sacramento area, and even at night, and they're not obtrusive at all. They can be designed to dim down, and this one is automatically. That's all in the staff report, but none of that matters if the interpretation is the sign can't be there.
So, in my opinion, I'm thinking, based on what the public is saying, they don't want it. At the public that is here does not want it. But your argument, or not really argument, suggestion is we have a proper ordinance designed.
I would just say that it leaves too much to interpretation, so much so that there's existing signs that I think one gentleman brought up may actually not be consistent with the code as it's currently interpreted. These things happen, codes change over time, things become yes or no, in or out, and we can certainly take a look at that. Amortization of signs is a long and sticky and expensive process. There is specific state regulation about what you have to do. It is not something that you go in with a weak heart and hope. It takes a long time to get a sign removed. When I say long, decades in some cases to get a sign removed because of protections that are in state law. Setting that aside, the council's job is to interpret the codes of the city. And we're all kind of seeking your counsel on this in terms of how do you read the code, and depending on the decision this evening, we'll come back and fix it so that it's clear for the next council. Did I do that okay, Mr. Attorney?
So I guess my question is for our city attorney in regards to the ambiguity of that code. How you as a jurist professional read that code and interpret it from your understanding.
I agree that it's ambiguous and it could be read either to allow one sign per parcel.
That's what I was.
Or it could also be interpreted quite easily to also mean one sign within the particular zone. There's 3 different zones laid out. The fact that there are already 2 or 3 signs in this one area doesn't necessarily mean that a prior planning commission interpreted differently. That would depend on what the code said at the time that a permit was issued, and the code may have been different at that time. We don't know. I don't know offhand when those signs went up. But the fact that there's there's 2 signs doesn't per se mean that the prior interpretation was that you could have 1 per parcel. And then, of course, that would then leave it up to the Subdivision Map Act as to who wants to, do a lot line adjustment and split a lot here and create a new parcel there, which could then obviously increase the number of parcels, which could exponentially increase the number of signs. So.
Well, I feel like the spirit of the law was that we didn't want to have 100 signs per se on that short stretch of road, but I'm more so, like I said, looking for clarification on that. The other question I have.
So I mean, I do agree with Mr. Teague that this is a policy decision in the end, and as our elected representatives of the city of Weed, you would be the ones whose direction would be most impactful, and that with that direction we would be able to, if it differs, well, basically no matter what it is, we'd probably want to try to codify that so that it was clear for future applicants. Really, that's who needs to understand what's written here.
One question
I have one more quick question, though. So there was a member of the public that had mentioned 4 signs on the Shastina storage, and there are 2 above-ground billboards that are, on poles, so to speak, there. And I'm kind of curious on that interpretation. Is that...
So Mr. Teague may be able to comment better on this, but there is a difference between an on-premises sign, which is a sign that advertises for a business that is located at the same place that the sign is, and an off-premises sign. And an off-premises sign is something that, like the weed store sign, The weed store is not located right underneath that sign. That's an off-premises sign, and those have much less protection. In fact, there's a separate section of our code that prohibits off-premises signs, and it's interesting to try to interpret both of these sections consistently with one another. But Mr. Teague, did you have anything else to say about that?
No, except most planners run screaming from sign codes for this very reason. It can be very difficult to interpret what's there. If it helps at all, I did have a discussion with the Planning Commission chair afterwards, who was apparently around when this code was adopted and amended in 2013. I was not here, thankfully, and he had some opinions that it followed the interpretation of one sign for that stretch of roadway, and as the city attorney has pointed out, just because there's an existing sign there, they may have been there since before the sign was edited. They've been up there for a while, and there are differences between how signs are measured. Planners look at the code, and there can be one sign. There can be one sign with multiple stores. There can be multiple panels on a sign, and a lot of that is left out of this code. This is not a modern sign code. Modern sign code runs for dozens of pages and specifically addresses these issues so that you don't have these questions come up. I know I'm not much help to you, but at this point, we are where we are with the code, and we have to have a decision.
Yeah, and I think there's some right to have on-premises signs, and off-premises signs, as I mentioned, are discretionary.
You're up.
Okay, since it does run along the freeway, we have state as well. In other words, this would have restrictions.
Absolutely. In the staff report, we go to great lengths to demonstrate the findings that Caltrans was make before they'll issue a permit. The first finding is they call us and they ask if we're okay with the sign. And so far, we've told them to hold off on their permit processing until we've made a decision. So, but there are several parameters, and I believe the applicant had mentioned, they are so tightly written that it's unlikely there would be another highway sign in this area because of the distance requirements that are located, along there. This dates back to Eisenhower and Mamie and Lady Bird and all of that, because she hated highway signs. The history of highway signs.
Who hated them? Did you say?
It went back to Mrs. Eisenhower. I don't think it was Johnson. I think it was Eisenhower that did that. Could have been Mamie. I don't remember.
I think it was Johnson.
Is it Johnson? Lady Bird Johnson, right? That's right.
Yeah.
See what happens when I'm late. I don't get my history right. So there are pretty specific regulations for all federally funded highways, specifically to eliminate billboards or to regulate them specifically. And this would have to follow those. That is a Caltrans determination. But first they have to get through our code to allow it to be in the city at all. And there are other places in town, like up on 97 or whatever, where you could do something like this, depending again on how the code is finalized. But you're right, is Lady Bird.
My father worked for Caltrans, and one of his jobs at one point was to go and inform everybody they had to take their sign down. That in late 60s, early 70s? Early 70s?
I wasn't born then.
No, I know. It's before your time.
Are we done?
Do we have any other questions from council?
I do. Justin, are there only 2 signs? I realize there's multiple signs on the thing, but are there only 2 poles that hold signs? There's not 3?
No, there's 2 poles. One pole holds 4
2 and 2
billboards, for lack of another term.
Right.
And the other, and I can confirm that those both existed prior to 2013.
Both of those did?
Yes, nothing's been erected after 2013 in that area. So the ordinance limiting, however, that was modified in 2013. That's when this ordinance was last addressed. Those signs predate that.
Okay.
Was the Butler building, that's an on-premise sign, though, right?
It's on premise, yes.
And it's not a great big giant thing up in the air, is it?
No, not that bad.
Yes.
It's not McDonald's.
You're talking about the billboard? Yes, it's up in the air.
Billboard's high.
Yeah.
And is it just by itself?
It sits by itself, and it has actually 4 different signs on the pole.
But it's not, so there's that one and two more.
So no, there's one pole at 800 Shastina Drive, and there's one pole in the parking lot of 550 Shastina Drive.
If it please the council, there's photos of this on page 42 of the staff
Yeah.
report, and also on page 43, shows both signs, or both structures that have signs on them.
Quickly on our computers.
Oh, I was looking at page, what pages did you, I was looking at 3 and 4.
Well, I have pardon me, I have 42 of the PDF. I don't know what you have in front of you, but it's page 42 of the PDF, page 3 of the staff report for the planning commission. And then on the following page is the weed store sign.
Yeah, okay. And they're both on 2 different parcels, right? Okay. And is this one proposed for a different parcel?
Yes.
Oh. So this one belongs to the apartments, hotel. And the other one sits on
The mini storage.
the mini storage
And this one's proposed for.
for Solanos.
Solanos, yes.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Council members, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
We're gonna close it and discuss it.
Well, we're discussing it now.
Well, I thought we closed it and then discussion.
We're supposed to close it and discuss it.
So,
But if you want to discuss it now.
all right, well, then we will close the public hearing if there are no other questions for staff and go into council discussion.
Are you starting, Bob?
Sure. I'm somewhat confused, when we, fellow from Legacy, threw in the other 2 signs, our communication signs, that we were, public bulletin board is what we originally contacted the Legacy regarding, I believe. Is that right? I mean, we need to separate we're talking three signs now. You mentioned 3 signs.
Yes, originally the discussion was about the freeway facing sign. And then there was another discussion that was kind of off the side about building this city hall sign here, separate from the freeway facing sign. And then the discussion went back towards building the freeway sign and possibly building the city hall sign as part of like a development agreement, and maybe an additional sign, a 3rd sign at the Siskiyou College.
Okay. So it seems to me that we need to separate those 2 things right now. I mean, throwing it together, I mean, we have people protesting the large sign, and if they want to protest, they certainly have the right to protest if we're going to have a public bulletin board. And when we talk about public bulletin board, originally when we started talking about this, we were talking about the elementary school was going to throw in some funding, high school wanted some funding, college was going to throw in some funding. It was a community effort when we first started talking about the the bulletin board. So, in the other part, Mr. Mayor, I think that it's obvious that we have to do something and make a decision on the ordinance, correct? And we're not going to do that tonight? Are we going to rewrite it?
So the ordinance definitely needs to be reviewed, as it is ambiguous, but we need to make a decision as a policy, as a legislative body tonight on the policy, how we interpret said ordinance. As far as the signage goes, the direction this council gave to staff previously was to review a quotation for a sign for City Hall to be on the property here for a public sign, as well as discussions with College of the Siskiyous, as well as Weed Elementary and the high school, for possibly seeing about getting another sign near College Avenue for advertisement for the school and for public event notices, things like that. I'm not sure, it's not clear to me how this all got wrapped into a commercial sign agreement on a commercial parcel in South Weed, wrapped together. And that's my question earlier about the potential quid pro quo, and I think staff was correct in removing that from the Planning Commission's review, because that has nothing to do with the conditional use permit for a commercial sign. So I have some concerns and some further questions regarding what was done previously that we may or may not be aware of fully as a council. My other concern here is that we're being asked to make a decision on an ambiguous code that is not clear. It was obviously put in place after the grandfather signs that were put in, which leaves me to question the intent of that code. If we had 2 signs erected and then a code was put in place saying only 1 sign was allowed, that tends to lend itself to, you know, the intent was not to add continual more signs. I think at the very least, I would like to see the ordinance reviewed and that ordinance language cleaned up and properly defined, not just for yourself, but any other future applicants to have clearer direction on that. I think we've put everybody, I think it sounds like we may have potentially wasted your time and staff time as well. I haven't had a member of the public tonight, nor reviewing the video of the planning commission. There was no proponents supporting that in that meeting as well. So that leaves me with a lack of confidence in you know, considering an approval to move forward against an ambiguous code there.
I would like to make a motion.
Wait, I didn't get a chance to talk.
No,
I didn't either. I don't have anything to talk about anymore
Oh, I
because
didn't.
everything is, to me,
Councilmember
has been
Tabatabaras
already
has
said. Oh, I know, that's fine.
some discussion, so we'll continue.
Where'd he go? Oh. Somebody mentioned that there would be advertising on there. Advertising is of the 68 seconds, 63 seconds. How much of that time is advertising?
So this is for the freeway facing sign only that would have
Right.
any commercial advertising. It depends. So if there's like a natural disaster, an emergency fire, something like that,
Yeah.
then 0% is advertising, commercial advertising. 100% of the sign is used for
Right.
those emergency alerts. When the sign, and other times, 20% of the ad space is used for city promotions. So that would be for stuff like promoting, like, say, Student of the Month announcements, festivals,
Right.
tourism ads for the city. But then 80% would be for commercial advertising.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any more questions for you. I do respect the planning commission's decision. I think that that's their job and they researched it. And I do respect their decision on that. And I remember seeing something about this and the other 2 signs, all 3 of them. This was not the place that I thought that it was going to be, but all it was a sign in some kind of someplace. I can agree with not having it bunched in with the rest of them. And I also agree with having that cleaned up, our sign ordinance cleaned up, because that seems to be what we do a lot, is cleaning that up. But I would like to research, but this is not part of it. The 2 that we wanted here at City Hall and at the college, although you stated that they wanted it at the college?
It's undetermined.
Oh, okay. Both of those were undetermined.
Yeah, the instruction that was given to staff previously by the council was to research and get quotations on what that would cost.
On those 2.
On those 2.
Right,
Nothing to
not
do with the
necessarily
commercial
this one.
sign. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. And no offense to you, but I don't like the 80-20. But that's okay.
And
I get
something
it.
that I will share with council, from having reviewed the video of the planning commission, this signage is protected by the First Amendment. So as a legislative body, neither the planning commission nor the city council can, you know, make any law or ordinance stating what can or cannot be content on said signs. So.
Sorry, I just want to make a clarification that there was nothing set in stone, 80-20, all that, the locations of it, there was nothing set in stone. So that would have been the point if you wanted to have a conversation about this and see what would work for the city and what objections or solutions to the objections from the community would satisfy those concerns. That's kind of where I think we would be at, is not starting from scratch, but there was concepts thrown out there, but we're not tied to those concepts at all.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a point of order. The discussion before this council, the public hearing is regarding
That sign.
that particular sign. Any conversation that varies from that needs to stick specifically to the sign in question. The other signs can be another conversation, and it's not that I don't disagree or agree, it's just what's before us now is this particular item. And with that in mind, I would like to make a motion to uphold the Planning Commission's decision and direct the staff to bring forward some sample codes so that we can make a decision on something that makes sense to the public, makes sense hopefully to us, so we don't have to revisit this.
Can I second that yet?
Yeah, just for clarification, do you want those first to go to the Planning Commission, since the,
Oh, yes, I would. I mean,
for
that's not-
recommendation?
Yeah.
Even are you saying the other signs?
The
All
code-
sa-
the
all
code
all
amendment.
all the
Oh.
So I will
samples and
make a
whatever,
motion to amend Councilmember Palfini's motion that we uphold the decision of the Planning Commission and send this back to the Planning Commission and staff for review of the ordinance and to update as, propose an update to us based on, you know, an ordinance that makes sense, having reviewed other cities that have clearer, language in their ordinance.
I don't know that there's anything clear, but.
I'll second that amendment if we need to.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Can at this time I ask that we get the other signs that we've been looking at onto
So
the next agenda?
Thank you.
that was already a direction that this council gave to staff, and so I don't see a reason why that can't be discussed.
We did give it to staff? When did we do that?
That was several meetings ago that we had asked staff several
Yeah,
times
yeah.
in the past that staff was directed to get quotations on those. And those do need to be kept separate from any commercial
It's only
signage.
been a year and 7 months that I can count, but that's okay.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, a question, with, I forgot your name, the fellow from Legacy and our staff, can we encourage that conversation regarding those other two signs?
Yes, that was already
With
directed
him.
to staff,
Okay.
2 mayors ago.
So
Like-
we
like
need,
Had been stated almost 2 years ago.
okay.
I was
That
in
was the
office
initial
for a whole
thing.
2
Thank
months
you.
when that direction was given, so. Staff can certainly continue that discussion, and we will follow up in staff meetings to make sure that that gets done according to the previous instruction. All right, moving on to public hearing item B. Council will hold a public hearing to discuss and solicit comments on the submittal of the Community Development Block Grant, accomplishments, and closeout report for the Weed Micro Enterprise Assistance Program 20-CDBG-12090. All right, so we will go on to our staff report.
Okay, good evening, council. My name is Quentin Gaddy. I am the director of the Small Business Development Center. So we provide confidential one-on-one business advising to businesses in Siskiyou, Shasta, and Trinity County. And so to provide some context to this program, we applied for this program in 2020, kind of during the peak of COVID. And this program here is what's called a Micro Enterprise Assistance Program. And so what it is it's a program funded by the Community Development Block Grant to provide financial and technical assistance to small businesses with 5 or fewer employees, including the owner, of whom is income qualified. And so this is one program that I run out of 5 total CDBG programs for the city, including all of the different COVID programs with Great Northern Services. And I also ran another COVID microenterprise program as well. And so this is the final stage of the program. It did end on June 20th, and we're kind of going to go over, what were the challenges of the program, of which there were many, what were the accomplishments of the program, and if we were looking future, what we might do differently. And so in total, I'll start with the challenges of the program. Most of them are primarily statutory, which is just the way the program is written in law in the first place, has made it very difficult to get dollars out. A lot of times what will happen is you'll start working with a business on going through this, and then they realize all of the work that's needed to finally make it to the end, and a lot of people ended up not following through and finishing it. So some of the big challenges were we had another microenterprise program that was funded through the COVID program, and we did work with 4 microenterprises and WEED to fund them through that program. And because of the duplication of benefits requirements for that program, if they went through one, they couldn't then go in the other in that same time frame. So we funded 4 through that other program instead because it had a tighter funding window. 3 of the applicants that we had for this program ended up either closing their business, they didn't have the sufficient planning or permits needed to do what they intended to do with the funds, or they didn't complete follow through with actually opening their business. We worked with another 3 businesses on pre-applications, getting them up, who they likely would have been eligible, but never followed through with submitting applications. Some of them were due to not having city business license permits, and I can't go report a business to the city for not having a license, part of the confidentiality requirements, but they wouldn't be eligible to proceed through the program. Other businesses were not up to date on their taxes, and this was another hard requirement for the program. And so out of total, there were 10 potential recipients who could have fully participated in the program but did not, unfortunately. Additionally, we had several other businesses in town who would have been great recipients for a program like this, but they were above that 5-employee max, and that made them ineligible. So if I was to do this again or do this in the future, again, we would look at structuring it as what's called a business assistance program as opposed to a microenterprise assistance program. This wouldn't have that 5-employee cap, and we'd have a lot more flexibility in terms of what businesses we'd be able to fund. We're doing one in the city of Wairika right now, and we're not having a whole lot of difficulty with getting funds out in that program because it's just way easier to meet the income requirements for that. The income caps for this program, if you're a household of 1, was about $39,000 a year. And so if you were over that, you were ineligible for the program. So that made it challenging. In total, we were able to assist 2 businesses fully. And the process of this was we treated these funds like grant funds, but they got underwritten like a business loan. So each one of these applications would require, an exhaustive review of tax returns. It would require financial projections and a really solid plan for how they were going to use funds. We tried to focus the funds on activities that would directly increase the profitability of the applicants. And so we were able to financially fund 2 businesses who were able to use funds towards purchasing heavy equipment towards their businesses that allowed them to scale or add more services as well. In addition, we assisted 8 businesses just through technical assistance. This is everything from help on, just getting incorporated in the state of California, developing business plans, marketing plans. We did a lot of data analysis with these businesses on their foot traffic and things like this. And so that's the total program achievements. Marketing this business was a little difficult. We tried a few different avenues. Shared this multiple times with the WEED Chamber of Commerce, and would also do a lot of direct referrals as I'm working with businesses through the Small Business Development Center. A lot of times I would have to, kind of like hound people, and I did a lot of boots on the ground where I would go up and down Main Street, go into places of business with business cards, tell them about the program. And there are a lot of people whose reaction was, this kind of seems a little too good to be true. And there are a lot of businesses who just kind of saw all the steep requirements, all the tax returns, the financial statements, the projections and pro formas, and just didn't end up buckling down to complete the work. So I still think in the future these types of programs would be beneficial for revitalization of the commercial district in WEED. But like I said, I would not go after a microenterprise program again. Just the rules and the requirements that come from HUD, from the CDBG program, to implement this program made it really, really difficult on the ground level. And so I can answer any questions on the administration of the project, how it worked in tandem with some of our other programs, and some of the pitfalls that we experience. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for your report. Do we have any questions from council?
You have a question for me?
Yes.
You going first, Ken? You want me to? No, go ahead. When you said they had difficulty with the city business license, was it on our end?
No, there are a lot of businesses who kind of fly by the seat of their pants, is how I describe it, where they're doing back of the napkin, they're not up to date on taxes, they're in business in practice, but they don't actually have licenses. I have assisted some of the businesses complete the application through, I want to say it's HDL. So I've been able to provide TA, and one of my applicants at the time of application didn't have a license, but we got her one. So I wouldn't go blaming it on the system.
So Sandy, that program that we've got for the city business license, it's working?
No, I hate it. I hate that it's outsourced. I wish I could put a piece of paper in here. I hate that I have to go through Fresno. That's ridiculous. To get a business license, why do I have to go to Fresno? Here, hand Sandy a piece of paper. Sorry, I'm the one person that.
You're it? Yay!
So,
I disagree with that.
Well, she's got something to
no.
say, I can tell.
I appreciate my perspective. I help people navigate these things, so I tend to be like, I just get it done. I don't generally will have an opinion, but I think the opinions of business owners who actually have to do it are valid.
And I'd love that business owner to come give us her opinion when it's time for that comment section.
Do you have more questions?
Do we have any other questions from council?
I have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Was it primarily because the income level on that thing is just, I don't know what you would do trying to start a business on 39,000?
I think so. There's a few challenges, and I've actually written to the Senator Padilla's office about this before. One is that a lot of that data was determined by the 2011 through 2015 ACS census data.
Ooh.
Yes, really, really challenging, especially if you looked at the period of inflation that we've had since 2015 to 2024. It's really, really significant. And one of the challenges also is that Siskiyou County as a whole is already a fairly low-income community in respect to the state. And so when HUD determines these income limits, they look at, okay, well, what is low income in a low-income area? And it makes it really, really small. And so in Siskiyou County, it's going to be $39,000. If you go into San Francisco, for example, it's a six-figure level. It's a night and day difference. So I really wish they would go after the state median to establish the income limits as opposed to looking at a county which already deals with persistent poverty and then making those income limits already lower based on those amounts.
It's just tough to start a business with a shoestring.
It's about impossible, yeah.
I'm gonna open up a store next week. I'm gonna bring 2 bags of potato chips.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Now,
gonna be for sale.
if it was a business assistance program, the income qualification would be through one of the jobs that you create. If one of those jobs falls under the income limits, which is a lot more reasonable for someone working part-time or full-time at a small business as opposed to the business owner himself. So that's one of the statutory challenges.
All right. Any other questions from the council?
That's it for me.
Mr. Mayor, I don't really have a question. It's just, as these programs open up, and we've talked about it before, you are offering the navigation, and the people that are coming forward definitely need the navigation. So when I'm asking if we had more help navigating, I mean, were you as the people failed to complete, was it the lack of their understanding of what they had to do, or is it just the shortcoming of those applicants?
No, I think the big thing really was because I made myself as available as possible to help through every step of the way, putting together all the documents, actually doing the application itself. I made myself fully available for that. The biggest obstacle, in my opinion, was that a lot of people will naturally file for a tax extension, and they will push it off to the very, very, very last minute. And that was something that we saw time and time again, is that folks were not up to date on their taxes, and if they weren't up to date on their taxes, they weren't eligible for participation in the program. In my opinion, that was the number one obstacle, and I can't take on that side of the work for them. I can tell them, like, hey, once your taxes are ready, we can move forward, but I can't actually work with them on their taxes itself.
Can we, for the future, can we have a list of the things why people failed?
Yes, yes.
I mean, I think it'd be helpful because if you're talking about the not delinquent, but late taxes, I mean, that's something that should be number one. And obviously, that's your first thing you ask them. Are you current on your taxes?
Yeah, it's one of the there will be like the first few things that I'm looking at are A, do they have an active City of Weed business license, and are they located in city limits? B, are their taxes up to date, because I have to income qualify them right out the gate to see if they're even eligible in participation in the program. So those right there will be, the two most important things.
What are the numbers of the people when we talk about applicants? How many applicants did we have in weed?
So in total, we had 4 that we pushed through the COVID program. We had 5 who fully submitted applications for this program, 2 who got funded, 3 who I worked with on pre-applications and, provided all the TA and all the information. I would actually go to their place of business. I wouldn't have them come up to Wairika. I'd come down here and meet with them, but never followed through with applications. So in total, we had 9, 4 of which went to the COVID, 5 which went to this one, 2 of which were finally approved through this one.
And how many people failed?
7.
7, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it sounds like you've got it pretty much covered, Quentin. Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
And how much taxes do people that only make $39,000 a year have to pay?
Well, the issue that he said was the tax extension, and so it's not that the amount of they're paying, they're just putting off their filing until October on a tax extension.
Yeah, a lot of times folks, wouldn't really understand what their actual tax hit would be at the end of the year. They were just assuming they were going to get hit.
By starting the business.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there is a high need for more. I do refer a lot of people who are low income to the VITA program that's run by JEDI in Mount Shasta. It provides free tax assistance every year. A lot of it is the challenge of actually getting all of your ducks in a row, getting all of your financial statements put together, all of your invoices, receipts, etc. It's something that for a lot of people, who are running their business every day, it's the last thing they want to do. And so that's been a challenge, and they'll perceive that, well, if I file now, I'm going to have this big bill that I got to pay, whether they did or not. That was their perception. And so it was, I got to take a hit now and then wait however long for this grant to come through. I think that was the perspective a lot of business owners had.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, we will go ahead and move on to, we open the public hearing and move on to testimony from interested parties.
Thank you.
And closing the grant. Thank you very much for your report.
Hi, I'm Becca Larson. I own Pyroclastic Chocolates, and I received the CDBG grant this year, I guess end of last year. I worked with Quentin the whole time, and he and Michelle, somebody reached out to me via phone and said, we think your business would be a great fit for this program. Here's what you have to do. And even I really dragged my feet through the whole entire process because I thought it was a lot more complicated than it ended up being. At the time that they reached out to me, I did not have a City of Weed business license. I had just moved into the city from Lake Shastina, and getting a City of Weed business license was not as easy as it should have been, because everything has to go through Fresno, and there's nobody who knows what they're talking about when I try to call them, if I can even reach them, or there's nobody that I can email with. And, we have great staff here at City Hall, and I wish that we could actually just utilize them for, stamp a business license kind of thing. Anyway, that's beside the point, but I apologize for my interruption earlier. I received the CDBG block grant, and I was able to purchase a bunch of smaller equipment and cost of goods, raw materials, and it was absolutely a lifesaver for me. My business is such that my income is really, really variable depending on the seasons and the weather. When it's hot, nobody wants to buy chocolate, and so if nobody wants to buy chocolate, I don't have any income. And that's really challenging, but with the grant, I was able to have some working capital to float me through the lean times. I am also in the process of building out a brick and mortar here in town on Weed Boulevard in the old Grass Auto car wash and oil change. And, you know, the equipment that I got with this grant is such that I can use it now to, you know, get me through to when I move in there and actually can really grow my business in a meaningful way. I'm really at kind of an awkward place where I am not able to really make as much money as I need to as a home-based business, and am really waiting on a bunch of things that are out of my control in order to get into my building and really grow. And I can't wait to open and serve you guys coffee and crepes and employ, you know, people here in town. That is my goal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other testimony from interested parties?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I had a question. On the Fresno, what are we, can you explain what she's,
Getting off the subject.
is it? Getting off the subject?
Yeah, I think we're just a public hearing regarding the CDBG grant.
Okay.
That has to do with the business license for
Yeah,
City of Weed.
why?
It's just, it's outsourced.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Hall, as a local business owner who's gone through that process for multiple years, I'm happy to discuss with you after the meeting. If
Do you
have any
agree with
questions. No, not from my experience.
Okay.
My experience has been positive, but that's outside the scope of this hearing. So, okay, any rebuttal from project proponents? All right, staff response. I think we've pretty much gone over everything. There's no. All right. Well, we will close the public hearing and move on to city council discussion of the project before we take action.
Are we taking action on it?
Yes. And this is a public hearing to accept.
Accomplishment and close out?
Make a motion to adopt, I think it's resolution 35, 2024. No, that's conflict of interest, sorry, blah, blah.
Was it on this?
It's supposed to be on it right after consent.
Yeah, so we're moving on. We would be making a motion to accept and close out the closeout report.
Yeah, accept and close out the
accomplishments.
report from the Weed Micro Assistance Program. 20 CDBG 12090.
I'll
Yes.
second. Get through that.
Okay.
Whatever I said.
Okay, so just so we're clear, Councilmember Tablero made a motion to accept and close out the report.
Yes.
And we have
I'll
a second.
second.
All
I'll
in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We will now move on to council business. Item A, finance by motion. Council will consider adopting resolution number 32-2024, budget adjustments for the 24-25 fiscal year budget.
So this is just to adjust we have a 24-25 budget that was put in place last year. We do a 2-year budget. This is just to adjust those budget amounts per the attached document. Some of the highlights of the budget are sale of property and equipment. There's proposed sale of an ambulance, which I had at $30,000. I thought that was what I had talked to the fire chief about earlier. Per his discussion, it's more like $50,000, so that change will need to be made. Transfers into the general fund, which would include Measure O money for the library, police department, fire department, and public works, and a transfer of funds from Fund 37 for capital purchases that were discussed in our ad hoc budget meeting, which I have listed below. Outside services in administration contains an additional $25,000 for recruiting expenses and $150,000 for scanning and document retention services. Finance capital outlay contains intangible asset purchase of new finance software, which was approved in a prior council meeting. In the fire department budget, we have recommend that we encumber Measure O funds for the purchase of the build out actually, I'm sorry, I'm in police right now. Sorry, I apologize. In the police department budget, Measure O funds for a new vehicle, and there's also $15,000 encumbered for purchase of a fitness equipment that was a grant received in the prior fiscal year. In the fire department budget, there is a capital outlay that is going to hit not this fiscal year, but the 25-26 fiscal year of $266,000. Oh, and there we go. For a wildland fire fighting truck. So we're wanting to encumber the Measure O funds and the proceeds from the sale of the ambulance to help pay for that acquisition in the following fiscal year. In the COPS budget, we've encumbered $69,428 of COPS funds from the prior fiscal year. Those are to be used to complete the purchase of the police department vehicle and to purchase a new/used CSO vehicle, some handheld radios, and the balance to be used for training in the police department. In the library budget, we've put in I believe it's about $31,000 because there's significant repairs that need to be done to the library building. And we wanted to have some funds available to complete those repairs.
All right. Thank you for your staff report. Do we have any questions from council?
Yeah, I have a few. You said you discussed it at the ad hoc committee and the information is below? What was discussed at the ad hoc committee?
What I just read to you. And then the actual, if you go down a couple pages, the actual budget numbers are a couple pages down.
In this?
It is in mine.
Is this what I'm looking at, Daryl? Is this what I should be looking at?
There should be a whole list of items.
There was 100+ pages that was provided to council Monday for review on all of the different items, including the ad hoc committee and budget adjustment changes. As a member of the ad hoc committee, basically we looked at the last 2 years the city has run over $250,000 out of budget. And that was obviously an issue. We need to be able to run within the money we have for revenues coming in. So we looked at the budget this year, and we looked at expenses that had to come out outside of the Measure O allotment, which is set aside specifically and directed by that committee, and looked at items such as repairs to library, outfitting the already purchased vehicle for the fire department, and other expenditures, and including the document scanning, which is a one-time purchase. Went through funds that were available in other areas to move those in, while we also looked at and aligned the day-to-day operating expenses with the income coming in, so that basically we don't want the city to be in a position where 5 years down the road we've burned through all of our reserves and we're doing furloughs again. I, for one, take it very seriously that we operate like we should operate our households, where we can afford to pay our bills and not live on credit. And that was the purpose of having the ad hoc committee. There are things that we need to do as far as the city, between our vehicles for our police and fire, our library, and our administrative support here with documentation. But those are things that we need to, look at, plan for, and encumber in our budget, and not just spend money willy-nilly, as they say, or not spend it at all and not be able to accomplish the goals of the city. So again, that was all in that 100+ pages. I know I spent quite a bit of time my evenings reading through them all before the meetings, and I would encourage both the council and the public to do the same as well, to be well informed.
I don't have a lot to add to that. It was a very good explanation. I would say that I think there was a lot of conversations regarding the ad hoc committee off of the dais anyway. I think what people need to understand is that this was about the total budget. This wasn't about a particular department at all. It was about how to make us work within our means. Other than that, everything else was taken out of context, and decisions needed to be made, and that's what the ad hoc committee came up with. I think this is a very workable solution. I think most departments will be satisfied. I think all departments will be satisfied, to tell you the truth. They might not be directly or immediately satisfied, but I don't think the intent of the overall ad hoc committee was to make sure we operated within, like Darrell said, Mayor Parham said, within our means. I don't take light of the fact that there were some forms of agitation that I did not appreciate, and I don't think any of us appreciated, and I will not belabor that fact. But I believe that this is a very fair budget, well thought out. We have a very fine finance director now, and I think it is being the responsible parties to make sure that she works well with us. So.
The thing I'll add to that is that budget processes, both for municipalities as well as in large corporations, can be difficult. You don't always have the money to everybody gets what they want. I think in this case, every department in the city got what they needed to move forward and to improve. Certainly we'd like to have 4 or 5 fire engines and 4 or 5 patrol cars and new offices and things like that. We were able to go through and encumber enough funds that we could continue with the existing, projects that we had going, which would be looking at potentially the fire vehicle, a police patrol car, and repairs to the library that are needed, as well as administrative corrections here at City Hall with documentation and intranet, as we discussed and approved last month in the meeting. But going forward, it's important that when we look at these budgets, every department in this city needs to work together. And the purpose of a finance department is to make sure that not only are we correctly handling our finances, but that we can also stand in front of an auditor and be able to prove, do what you say what you do, and be able to show them that, yes, this is our budget, this is where we spent the money, and that the documentation is correct and in order. And I've had a lot of comments from people both council members and staff over the last month or so working through this, of this is how we've always done it, or this and that and the other. Well, how we've always done it has led to over millions of dollars in budget shortfalls over the years, which is one of the reasons I ran for this council 2 years ago. Because I don't want my children to inherit a town that's broke and has a failing Main Street and no local economy. And so, you know, we have a finance department, and we will go through that finance department to do what is right and correct and legal. And we will work together so that we can get all the support we need for each department to meet our financial goals. And I think this is a very fair budget that accomplishes that across the board without looking in the scope at one department over another.
Public comment.
Any other questions from council?
I have a comment, a few, actually. Just on line, the first line, it says 10-00 dot, I don't know if that's a dot or a dash, sorry, .001.339. The sale of the ambulance is to go to the library? That's what it says.
I don't have the document in front of me, but no, the sale of the ambulance would not go to the library.
I believe that
No,
should be
it-
338.
It doesn't say that, Steve. It says sale of the ambulance will be encumbered for the build-out of the new wildland firefighting truck. If you look down 10.422.475.
Right, but the very first highlighted line, I think that number should be 8, not 9.
Because you have it.
Is there a page number?
So, just correct me if I'm wrong.
Try 92.
Chief, are
Yeah.
you talking about that right there?
I'm talking about this right here.
Yeah, so it's on the agenda item itself, he's referring to 10.001339, sale of property and equipment, sale of ambulance projected at 30,000, right below that,
Okay.
Right.
same number, transfers into general fund, Measure O money for library, PD, fire department, public works. I don't believe that.
But that
Yeah,
10
it's a typo, sorry.
339 is for library,
Yeah,
and 338 is
So-
not. So I just wanted to make sure it wasn't.
right,
going
it
to
is
library.
not going to the library. So as far as the Measure O money, that's all approved prior by the Measure O committee. And I'll just speak to mine because I don't want to speak to anybody else's. So 40,000 of that was approved for a vehicle purchase. I have encumbered growth allocation money from COPS from last year that you accepted back in, I believe, October. That was above and beyond what was anticipated. That is what's being used here. So nothing's coming out of the general fund for that. That is Measure O money, purchasing $40,000 worth of a projected $52,000 vehicle plus build out. So in this case, the ambulance will not be going to fund the library at all.
Right. I just wanted to make the correction.
Council,
That was it.
I will point out that council has removed some items from consent, and that is part of that discussion, so I don't know if, how we want to handle that, because if we're going to have discussion about that, approve this, and then have discussion later, that might be in conflict, so.
Thank you, that was my concern.
Yeah.
Because my concern was, does this get the type 3 fire engine bill from Cascade Fire? Is it in that budget,
So this,
if we approve it?
No, it's in the 25-26 budget.
Will that be too late?
I
Will the
believe,
quote
Yeah, they have to
change?
approve, you gotta approve it tonight, or we have to go out for a whole new price.
But,
We don't approve it tonight.
but it wasn't gonna be ready for 18 months? So
Right.
like January,
It'll be
February
ready-
of 26?
No, it's gonna be ready in the summer of 25.
Okay, that's new information.
That's not, it was
that I
in the
hadn't
last
had
meeting.
before.
I said the same thing in the last meeting. It'll
No.
be ready in the summer.
No, you did not. We talked about it last meeting. You said it was gonna
Okay.
be 18 months.
so yeah, there was a projected date of, I think, 16 months, year and a half is what was
I'm the one
said.
that runs the fire department, and I talked to Cascade Fire. Cascade Fire told me they'll have it ready by next summer, period.
Okay, that information came out
That came
after
out last
the
meeting.
last meeting.
It
That
was
came out
during
in a
the last
discussion in my office, that it was going to be sooner than anticipated. We can go back later and look at video, but I do know that it was said to be projected 16 months out in the last meeting.
In the last meeting, yeah.
Yes.
'Cause I-
That's, so there is a potential that it could be in this fiscal year, so let's just say that. Even though this says 25, 26, it's highly likely it's going to be in this fiscal year, 24, 25.
Right, okay, 25.
Based on this
Summer
information.
25.
And what does that do to the suggested budget?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, clearly, we don't have all the funds for it budgeted in this budget because my understanding it was gonna be in the 25, 26 budget. I was told that multiple times. I guess, we would have to see, we would have to pull those funds.
So if we're planning for 25, 26 budget year, that would be beyond July 1st. Now, we're talking about it would be completed next summer.
Summer of next year, yep.
So it's possible that it could be delivered after July 1st, thus meeting the budget
Most likely.
requirement.
25,
Could be.
26.
Yep.
Okay,
I don't have an exact date, but they said the summer of 25.
but you don't anticipate they're gonna call us in April and say it's
No.
ready?
No,
Okay,
it'd be the summer.
so I think we're okay there as far as, that doesn't change our budget projection if we're looking at taking delivery in July.
Okay,
Is that right, Jill? You agree with that?
Yeah, my understanding is it was gonna be part of the 25, 26 budget, so I had
It'd
not,
just be early 25,
I'd not
26.
included, I encumbered funds from this fiscal year to go towards that purchase, but I did not put that purchase in this year's budget.
So something that we'll need to consider when we discuss that item later on the agenda is, if that item is approved, potentially taking delivery date post July 1st in order to meet our budget requirements.
I have a question. May I have another
Of
question?
course.
Is any of the money for equipment from the park fire in any of this? It wouldn't be because it hasn't been,
No.
it hasn't been invoiced.
We
Well,
hasn't been, yeah, correct.
So there's that money that will be coming in.
So yes, there would be, anticipated revenues
Coming in?
over the next few months, yeah, that I can't really project
I have,
because.
I have the projection if you'd like to hear it.
You do? For the park fire?
We have the grant, the sites and the Thompson Fire, we already signed the invoice for that. It's
And we
35.
have not received that money?
Nope, we will
Yep, right.
soon. And just for the equipment, we'll be getting $35,000 for that,
For both fires?
for both fires. We're gonna get $600 for the Shelley Fire. We were only there 4 hours, but they got us
Right,
there and
they-
turned us around. We will get $10,344 for equipment from the Mill Fire. Not this Mill Fire, the other one
Yeah,
in
Mill
Pilgrims
Fire
County.
too.
We're gonna get $25,000 from the Park Fire and $11,760 from the outage of the mill coming up soon.
Oh, right.
And that's if we don't go on any more fires this year at all. That's what we'll be bringing in.
That's coming
Just
in.
for equipment.
And on those, you also get admin fee. Do you have approximately how much admin fee is gonna come in?
I didn't bring that with me, I'm sorry, but it's
Okay.
10% of what the total bill.
Admin fee doesn't
So-
enter into the conversation.
Yeah, admin fee,
No, it doesn't, but it does enter
Is-
into the conversation that the city does have money to go into the general fund from these fires that the trucks go out on. So it doesn't, yes, it does add to it, but not to them, but it does to the city. Okay,
And we also have the $50,000 from the sale of engine 1212 that needs to go towards the purchase. of
oh,
that.
that's there
That was in
someplace,
2022, we sold that
right.
engine for $50,000 with the stipulation that it'll go towards the Type 3 build.
So on that, we have already invested $90,000+ in the Type 3 for the chassis purchase.
Well, it's $90,000 for the chassis and the radios for it, yes.
Right.
Correct.
So I'm pretty sure that 50,000's been consumed in that purchase from the 2022 budget.
Actually, we took that out of revenue from fires, from equipment. That
No, I mean,
was,
looking at your budget, we have, between the total number of fire payouts from 2018 to now and the general fund amounts that were put in, just under $700,000. And from 2018 to date, we have spent nearly $900,000 total between equipment and all of the budget items, maintenance, things like that. So, which is fine, because we need to have equipment and maintenance and things like that. But there is no kitty of money sitting aside from previous waiting to be spent. That money's already been.
All right, well, I have a question about that, I'm really sorry, but every time that I need to move money from the equipment fund, I have to come here to the city council and ask to move that. I've only done it twice. Once was the $90,000 for the chassis, and once was to put $35,000 into maintenance. No other money have I moved.
Right.
So I have a record of $277,000 that should be in that account right now, not including any of that money I just told you.
Well, let Jill speak to
And
that.
if it's
and how that
been
money gets
moved,
spent.
I was not notified of it.
What we did is we went back, you were pulling numbers from 2018 forward as far as what you got for equipment reimbursement. So I also went back to 2018 and just went line item by line item, pulled out vehicle maintenance, mechanic fees, any purchases that were related to equipment, to compare what we had spent on equipment and what your numbers were as far as what you'd taken in from mutual aid assignments that were to be used for equipment. And the amount we spent in every single fiscal year far exceeded what you took in. So I think that argument needs to be taken off the table. I think you've more than fulfilled that requirement to use those funds for equipment purchases.
So you're saying I used $900,000? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's something like that. I have the paperwork back in my office. I can show it to you.
I would have to see it. I can't believe that.
So,
Because I have a budget as well.
did you say that 700,000 has been brought in from?
No, what I'm
fires?
saying is the amount that has been spent from a combination of fires and general fund allotment from each budget
The combination.
exceeded, the expenditures exceeded the combination of revenues between fire and outside strike teams and the general fund allotment that the previous councils had made by nearly $200,000.
What was the general fund allotment?
I'd have to go through all the numbers. That was something with you in the ad hoc committee. The finance department does have all the information that was presented there. One of the actions that the committee took to get a better accounting of that is all of the strike team income and expenses will be accounted in a separate account.
Right.
To make sure that everything is allocated correctly so that there is no confusion between general fund accounts and strike team accounts. That was something other fire departments had done as well in the past, and it just made good financial sense to keep track of that. I think the issue here is because the accounting, we've been through 4 or 5, finance directors and in less than 10 years and several city managers, that we have an apples to oranges comparison. And because several departments were operating their finances outside of the city finance department, the numbers were askew. And that is why one of the, one thing that will be going forward with staff is that we have a finance department to review finances to make sure they're accurate and correct for audits and for budgetary purposes. And so each department's going to work together to make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Again, I heard a lot of comments from people, this is how we've always done it. How we've always done it has been wrong, and how we've always done it has been way over budget. And in the past, it led to furloughs and the city having $0 in the bank. So we have competent professionals in place in every department now of the city. And we are going to work together to make sure that we, as a city, follow our protocols and processes and have open and transparent communication between departments so that we don't have the same pitfalls we had in the past.
And on that note, I just want to say, and I said this to Ken yesterday, we have competent people in our fire department that we may not have in 6 months if we cannot get this together. And that's all I have to say.
Well, I'm not questioning the competency of anybody, not the fire department or anybody else.
I think there's a
still
point
have-
of order here.
still have a question.
We're talking about the budget again.
Yeah.
And again, I feel this agitation is a little bit over the top. We've presented a budget.
Okay,
It's a fair budget.
so I
An
can make
ad
a
hoc,
motion to
no,
approve.
I've got the floor, please. This is an ad hoc committee that was appointed. We have come up with some very fair solutions. If you will give it a chance to unfold tonight. So far, it gets kept in a little cocoon with little tiny windows instead of listening to the whole sum of the game. This is, you're blowing it out the top. I'm just telling you right now.
Okay.
This is, we're not talking about taking anybody's money. We're adjusting how we purchase some equipment. If you can't live with that, I don't know what to tell you.
No, I just said I could.
So, again, agitating doesn't work. Doesn't work with me.
If you're looking at
Puts
me,
the
I'm
hair-
not trying to agitate anything.
No, I'm looking
Look at me.
at
Oh.
all of the emails that I
Okay.
personally received. You can just sense the stress in everybody's writing. I would just say, just bluntly knock it off. This is just something that we're doing to impart some fairness to everything. I think as we go, we have 5 items here to go through. And if we go through all 5 items, I don't think anybody is going to be all that displeased. We tried to work with everyone here. Fire just being part of it. But we have other places of stress in this city besides fire. And so we're addressing those as well.
So I'm going to
This
say.
is a team, okay?
There's a whole lot of clearly emotion here. I'm looking at this from facts, figures, and the law.
Yeah,
That's what we're here for as a judicial body. So at this point, I would, if there's any discussion pertaining to the budget specifically and not personality conflicts and opinions.
To item A,
To item A.
Item A.
I will make a motion to adopt
Do we have,
resolution.
well, hold on, I'm asking for questions from council. If there are none, I would like to open for public comment.
I have no more.
All right. Seeing as there is no public comment,
I would make, unless you want to continue, Sue.
Nope, go right ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 33-2024, oops, wrong one, 32-2024 budget adjustments for the 24-25 fiscal year budget.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item B, fire. By motion, council will consider adopting resolution number 33-2024, awarding the type 3 fire apparatus build to Cascade Fire Equipment.
Yeah, well, we brought this to you last month, and it was tabled for this month, so we have one bid for purchase of, the build of the chassis. It's basically $266,000, and you asked us to bring it back this month, so I'm bringing it back this month to see if we could get this approved so we can get it up there and get it start to be built.
All right, and we had tabled this last month because we knew there was budget shortfalls, and we had to appoint an ad hoc committee to go through and review that, which was done. It was quite exhaustive. And so we have encumbered funds between what was awarded by Measure O, and for those of you watching at home, Measure O money is delegated by the Measure O committee. And so that had been previously set aside for equipment for several areas of the city, including the fire department, as well as we encumbered the money from the potential future sale of the ambulance, with the expectation that the build-out, as it was projected last month, would complete in next year's fiscal year, which from our discussions earlier, it sounds like that would be after July 1, and which we would have funds from current fires that we haven't received yet, as well as any potential new ones, or general fund money from next year's budget to encumber to pay for this. One of the items that I'm looking at here with this is we have already invested over $90,000 of city funds into the chassis and radios, as discussed earlier, for this build out. And so there was no intent, at least on my part, to not continue with that build out, but to make sure that we had a properly aligned budget that we could afford to do so without furloughing employees in the next year.
Very well said.
Any discussion on the, any further discussion on the apparatus build out for the Type 3 fire engine? Any public comment?
No, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 33-2024 awarding the Type 3 fire engine apparatus build. to
I'll
Cascade
second. I'll
Fire.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item C, fire by motion. Council will consider purchase of command vehicle for the fire chief.
Well, that was part of the Measure O discussion in '24. And last year, we got $40,000 with a city match to purchase a command vehicle for the assistant chief, and $40,000 this year with a city match to buy a truck for me, so I can move my truck into the staff, so they can use it. With that, I got a grant. I received a grant, which is on the table tonight, to put it in the back of my current truck, which is a pump and a tank and a foam tank. So we could, and it's all, these three things are all interworking, and they've been interworking for a while. So if we don't get one of them, we might as well not do the rest of them. We might as well not accept the grant, we might as well not sell the ambulance, and we'll just leave my truck where it is, and we'll leave the ambulance where it is. Because they can't all be moved, there's no way. I can't take the equipment off the rescue and put it on a 2008 Ford pickup short bed, because I have jaws, I have 3 sets of backboards, I have all the EMS equipment. That truck will not pull it. There's no way. It's too wore out. It is good for an in-town, quick response truck, period. We don't take it out of town at all. So.
Which vehicle are you talking about?
That's the 2008 Ford pickup truck.
Okay.
You asked if we could move that gear into a pickup truck, and my answer right now would be no. From Rescue 1240. We would eventually move it on to the Type 3 build that we want. However, my goal was to get the tank and pump grant and put it in my current truck, and then put the equipment in there, so the guys that don't have an endorsement, Class B or Class A driver's license, can actually get out the door in a fire apparatus, a 4-wheel drive fire truck, that's considered a Type 6, which was 1212. 1212 was a Type 6, and actually come to your house and start putting it on a fire. Right now, they have to bring an ambulance or a pickup truck, or wait for a driver to show up to the fire department. So I'm just trying to progress the fire department. We have no 4-wheel drive fire trucks right now whatsoever, none, in our fleet.
So the 3 pickup trucks that we have 2 command trucks and this.
It's a utility truck.
Utility truck.
Right.
And they're all 2-wheel drive.
They're all 4-wheel drive.
Okay, so they're all the 3 of the vehicles we have currently are 4-wheel drive.
All the pickup trucks, yes.
Okay. And so the grant that we're gonna discuss later is to add a tank to one of the current command trucks.
A tank, a pump, and a foam system. In the truck that I currently drive, which is a 2018 Dodge Hemi, 4-wheel drive, which will become a Type 6 fire engine.
For my clarification, why would we not be able to accept that and do that install of that equipment without?
Because you're gonna take my truck away from me, I won't have one. If you don't approve a command truck for me, I won't have anything to drive. I'll have to set my keys down and go home, and I won't be able to respond, code 3 to anything. I'll have to take my car home and drive home.
I hope you have a 4-wheel drive. I'm just kidding.
I do.
And
I
The
did.
3 pickups are
I just
4-wheel drive,
kidding,
but
yeah.
nothing inside the building's 4-wheel drive,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chain them up when it snows.
What is the purchase cost of this command vehicle?
It's $58,000, I believe, the bid from Chevy. It's a brand new 2020, I say 2005, sorry, 2025 Chevy, sitting on a lot right now for, I believe it's $59,000. It's in your packet. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my packet.
Is that 59,000 the complete build out, like ready to go, or is that just
It's just a
chassis?
pickup truck, yeah.
Okay, so what are we?
And then
what
it's
is
about $20,000 to outfit it.
And that's
Lights, sirens, radios. Well, I do have radios on a CAL FIRE grant, but.
So the problem becomes, just to put it out there for me, is that if we accept a $35,000 grant, that $35,000 grant cost us $80,000.
Well,
because I have to replace something. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out
Sure,
there.
but the point was, my understanding was I was already getting a pickup because it was already approved last year to get me a pickup.
Well, okay,
So that's why
I don't
was-
know how many times we want to
No,
spend
no,
Major
that's what I'm
O
saying.
money.
That's why all this was in the works.
Okay, so Major O money purchased whose vehicle?
Brian's.
Okay, so
And-
Brian, we gave him $40,000, is that correct?
Correct? Last year. And approved for $40,000 this year for another command truck.
I thought the
And Measure O.
40,000, well, you guys can spend it the way you want, I suppose, but we already know that a command vehicle, you just said, cost $80,000. So if I was
Outfitted.
with the fire department, what I would have thought that, or at least my little butt thought that I would have done 40 and 40.
Well, we did $40,000, but the city promised to match it for $40,000. That was by
I
the
don't
city
remember a
manager.
city match anywhere.
It's in the Measure O thing. It's in
Major
there.
O is gonna do 40.
With a city match of 40,000, yes. It's right here. I have it, right in front of me. It's on the Measure O.
Oh, so are you talking about the 40,000 was supposed to be in the general fund? Coming right out of the fire department's funds?
I think he's talking about, last year and this year, they got
So we did
$40,000.
$40,000 worth of expenditures to buy a truck, and then Major O gave another 40 to complete the purchase.
Right.
Is that what I'm getting?
Last year and this year. It's right here.
That would be 2 trucks.
2 separate pickups.
And both trucks were purchased?
And just for clarification,
No.
the
One.
40,000 was during a time when we were seeing severe inflation, so the truck ended up costing more than anticipated because just the base prices went crazy during that time, so that's why it ended up being
Yeah.
more than the 40,000.
Okay.
Well, actually, this year, a 2025 pickup, we're only gonna pay $1,000 more than Brian's pickup truck last year.
Right, but for example, 40,000 for the police department was based on a prior vehicle purchase at around $35,000 to $38,000. That vehicle now is $52,000 for the
Correct.
same vehicle, so.
But yes, it's written on the Measure O thing right here that says
Okay, I'm fine
that
with
the
that.
city will give $40,000 to match the 40,000.
And that was included in the budget?
That was, yeah, must have been.
I wasn't here for last
wasn't
year's
here for the
budget,
budget.
so
I
I
had
haven't reviewed that.
$50,000 in the budget, yes. That has
So that was
now
part of
been
that
removed.
800,000 that was spent then, was that money allotted toward that Measure O match?
Part of what? I'm sorry.
So part of that total spend that was reviewed at the committee, that included that 40,000 that was set aside from the previous budgets then?
Yes.
Okay. So between the Measure O and what was already budgeted previously, even though the budget had a shortfall of $300,000, we had set aside the money for it on the budget.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing then.
I set $50,000 aside for this year for a pickup truck and $40,000 for the Measure O money. But the $50,000 was removed by the ad hoc committee.
So if we accept grant funding and take your truck out of service, how long do we have to expend that grant funding? So in other
In
words, what I'm
fact-
thinking is if I can wait 6 months,
Oh, no, this one you can't. This is a Bureau of Land Management grant, And the reason that they even gave the grant to us is because it has to be a truck in service and it has to be installed immediately. Because their goal is to give these out so they can actually start putting fires out around here. And they only gave out 24 of them in this area. And we were picked as one of them. You can't wait to put it in. You have to do it right now. That's part of their stipulation.
What's our budget looking for that?
And if any town is good at getting a fire, we win.
And that's why I also put a grant in for the pump and tank on the new build for 80,000, but it got turned down because that truck's not in service. So they said, we can't give it to you. So.
Now, I'll add that I have the 23-24, what was budgeted versus what it ended up being. He did have capital outlay, it doesn't say what it's for, but he did have capital outlay of $102,983 budgeted. So it doesn't say specifically what that was budgeted for, but there was a significant amount of money budgeted for something during that time period, and that could match what he's saying as far as the build out on the truck. Not the current one, but last year's measure of truck.
Some of Tim's math. Anyway.
Any other questions from council on this one?
I don't mind. I'm always willing to accept a grant, but I still have a problem with the fact that if we accept the grant, it's gonna take a truck out of service and it's gonna cost us $80,000 to have that grant. That's not my idea of a grant, but I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm just saying I don't think it's in a budget without.
Well, so can I add something for him?
Yeah.
What's not being pointed out is the shortcoming of the fire department's going to have if the ambulance is sold to the time that the new chassis is built out. They will not have, it hasn't been mentioned, but they won't have anything for the, anybody that's not licensed to drive to respond to fires. So that did need to be pointed out as well.
Yeah.
So.
And we do have a CAL FIRE grant for radios. They usually don't fund it till December, but that's okay. I have radios that are inside the chassis right now that I can use for my pickup truck, so it won't cost $20,000 to outfit it. Because I can get those radios later and give them the Cascade, because they're not ready to put radios in it yet anyway.
That's the truck that's being built out for Type 3
Yeah.
next year, so.
So I can take those radios and put them in my truck and that'll save,
20,000.
probably. So I just would need to buy lights and sirens and stickers, and that's it. And the county puts them in for free for us. They install them for free.
What's the price of a camper shell?
I'm not putting a shell on.
No shell, you can operate out of the cab?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there
You're not putting a shell on the new one?
Nope. No.
is there a way, number one, and second of all, would you please buy a long bed?
I did. I have a long bed.
Thank you. Is there a way that we can encumber the funds from wildfire to finish that? I mean, without exception a priority, no other way to expend it.
Yeah, we can encumber the funds as they come in, yes.
And it depends on, can we encumber those funds prior to the build-out? That would be another, what I'm trying to do is figure it
Sure.
into
It's
our
only
budget,
August.
Yeah, we're gonna get those funds. Those funds I told you about, we're getting those for sure. They're just not here yet.
What's that?
Right,
total,
I
Steve?
understand, but we were gonna use those funds to encumber your build-out.
The Type
Right.
3.
And again, I'm looking for funds to encumber to get a new truck.
Correct. We need to establish how far are we from completing the build out before we start encumbering funds. So that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying, and I believe that that's going to be a possibility, but you need to establish how much more do you need to finish that 265, and how close are we, and it'll have bearing on that. But I think that he's close. What is your projections for reimbursement, Steve?
106,000.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's if we don't go on any more incidents at all.
Yeah,
And
and
fire
that's-
season just started.
That's not counting any maintenance or anything else,
But-
but I mean, it's 106 just.
It's
based-
106 plus the projected 50,000 from the ambulance. So now we're up to 156,000. So now we're 100,000 short. Am I correct?
I have 177,000. I was $80,000 short
Okay, well,
of paying for the, right now.
Yeah, but if I.
Plus the type
but-
3,
but
we're
if I-
talking about
yeah.
the
That's the type 3.
command vehicle
Right.
to accept this grant right now.
Right.
yeah.
So that's without, I was $88,000 short. That's if we have no money whatsoever in our account, which we, apparently we don't. That's, except for the $50,000 for the 1212 we should have, because that was promised that we would spend that on a type 3. And all the money that I just told you about that we're gonna get here shortly. And we sell Rescue 1240 for 50,000. I will be $88,000 short of purchasing the type 3 right now.
Right, now, I'm okay with that part. My
We've
other-
already approved the type 3, now we're discussing
No,
the
I'm
command
sa-
vehicle.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
Right, but
So-
what we're discussing now is,
Right.
is how to get that command vehicle paid for, because.
But I didn't
w-
count
what-
the Measure O money. It's not in there. I didn't count that. That's not counting the Measure O money. So we have $88,000 to collect in the next 2 years almost. 2 fire seasons, which is not a, we will get that easy.
So on current vehicles, because the whole discussion here is that we don't have enough type B, class B operators.
Right.
So we've got 3 pickup trucks, an ambulance, and our fire engine.
Correct.
We have 3 staff firefighters, chief, assistant chief, and our recruiter.
Uh-huh.
How many volunteers do we have currently,
Brian? Huh?
today?
0.
So we have,
No, on your list, you have volunteers, not sitting at the station. No.
well, so we're talking about when a
Our
fire,
list of
when a fire
volunteers.
call out comes in,
Oh.
and we bring firefighters in to come and operate these vehicles, we're saying we don't have, class B operators, we need to use the trucks. So I'm asking, how many firefighters do we have that could come in currently on volunteer staff?
4.
Oh, yes, Chief, you can come up to the podium, so we're on, microphone, sorry. I noticed that at the planning commission meetings.
That's a very hard question to answer because a lot of our volunteers work for CAL FIRE and they're gone. They're on fires. So currently, the answer to that question is 4. And 3 of us are here right now. And the other one is Sanchez, who's our other full-time guy. There's no other drivers.
So we've got 4 vehicles and 4 people.
Yeah,
Not
but
including the engine.
I'm talking about, what's that? I'm sorry?
So we've got four vehicles that can be operated with a Class C license. And we've got 4 people currently able to respond that are not gone for CAL FIRE duty.
We have, it's actually an endorsement. It's an endorsement.
Well, no, you have to have a Class B endorsement to drive the engine. I
Right.
understand that. But I'm saying is you have 4 vehicles, you have the ambulance and 3 trucks currently
Right,
that only require a Class C driver's license to operate.
wrong. Only the ambulance, they can drive with the class
So
C.
you don't need you can't operate either of the command trucks or the other pickup truck?
No,
with the
I'm not
Class
talking about
You're
the
saying,
pickup trucks.
you
You
need to
said the
say truck
engines.
versus pickup truck. There's
The-
3 pickup trucks.
Everybody can
and
drive a
an
pickup truck, no problem. Everybody can drive the ambulance. Nobody else, the
Right.
3 engines in there,
Oh, I
we're the
understand
only ones
that.
that can drive that.
I've got a number of years with fire experience, and that's why I'm trying to clarify the math here, because we have 4 Class C operable vehicles and 4 people to operate those vehicles. So I'm trying to
No.
figure out the.
That wasn't the question you asked me, I'm sorry. If it was, I misunderstood you.
So we're saying that if we accept the grant to build out one of those command vehicles, we're still shy. How many of the 4 of you have Class B endorsement?
I have a class A. He has a class B. He has a class B.
So 3 of the 4 current people on the fire team have Class B.
4.
To answer your question, Chief has a commercial, I have a commercial B. Brian has an endorsement. Sanchez has an endorsement. which is training provided through our department. And one of our sleeper firefighters has an endorsement. So that's 5 total. That one sleeper firefighter that has his endorsement is also a firefighter with CAL FIRE. And he's currently been at the station for 1 day in the last month. The volunteer number, you asked how many volunteers do we have?
Right.
On the roster.
Specific to being able to operate commercial vehicles or just total?
Both.
Okay, so we have currently 5 sleeper firefighters, 4 of which are employed by CAL FIRE. One is our one of our seasonal firefighters, and give or take about 10 on the list of volunteers for the rest. So 15 total. 2 of those are not employed by CAL FIRE.
And how many can drive? Endorsement.
I lost count.
None?
How many can drive?
How many have endorsement?
Oh, those 10, probably all of them.
Out of the, so 15 volunteers, we already talked about the 5 paid. All of our company officers can drive, so that's 6 more. Without actually looking at the exact number, I would say out of those 15 volunteers, 7 have the correct qualifications to drive. All 7 of them are currently employed with CAL FIRE, and I would say are inactive during at least 6 to 8 months of the year.
So 7 out of 15, so that leaves us 8 active, 4 of you guys are paid staff. And the 4 of you that are paid staff are all able to drive the engines.
We have 6,
we only have 3 full-time paid staff.
and 3 part-time.
Right. Well, I
2 of the
consider that.
part-times they can only drive the ambulance.
Okay.
Right.
So we only have 4 people right now that can drive. Currently around here that do it all the time.
So 4 out of the 7 that are available right now during fire season.
Yes.
6. 4 out of the 6.
4 out of the 6.
6, yeah, sorry.
Okay, so I'm just looking at, we've got 4 vehicles that those 2 people can drive with the 6, and the rest of you are able to drive the engine.
Right.
So I'm not understanding the math why we're saying we can't accept a grant to outfit a command vehicle and not have enough vehicles to drive.
I would just specify that the full-time staff, with the exception of the one here with me today, are on a 4-10 schedule, which that means that they're not at the station 24 hours a day. I think the point that's trying to be made is it's not that we may not have a driver available to get the fire engine out of the bay. It's the time lag of getting from where those 10-hour-a-day employees live to the station, to the engine, to get it to where it needs to go. The benefit of getting another tank and pump would decrease the amount of time it takes for people to get from the station with water and a pump to wherever it needs to go.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
That's today. How many firefighters, how many do you have moving in once the college starts their classes? Will the station be full of sleepers?
It's unclear. I have one that's supposed to be moving in September 3rd, confirmed, who is a volunteer with us last year and is going to be in the academy.
Do they have an endorsement? No.
No.
But they could go jump in that engine and go to a fire because they'll be trained.
Which
Because you have training once a week.
which engine are you talking
Into
about?
the
The
type,
truck.
into the pickup.
Yes.
That one would not require any additional endorsements.
Right.
It would just require, what we're required to provide is training to the personnel on how to operate it. But there would be no additional DMV, commercial, or any endorsements like that required.
But once we get the students living down there, they can drive that
Correct.
to the fire.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And usually you're full with students? Once the college starts in October?
Yes.
We have
Usually.
The academy?
7, yeah, we have 5 right now, and that one moving in would make us 6, and we have room for 7, so we need one more.
So come October, when your other 10 CAL FIRE guys aren't working 30 days a month, they do respond to the station to grab an engine on a fire or an event.
Rarely.
Rarely. Because they have worked all fire season, now they want time off.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
But they
it doesn't happen,
But they can.
but fire department operations would make us account for no one else coming aside from paid staff or sleeper firefighters who are at the station.
And in the
When
winter,
when we go through our schedule daily,
Yeah.
we do not account for any additional personnel coming based off of previous experiences with no one else coming besides the people who are scheduled.
When the mill fire hit
right.
and you took your engine out, you went out in an engine,
Mhm.
did anybody come down to the station to take any of the other engines out?
During the mill fire, I
I
took
did.
one firefighter in an engine and 2 other sleeper firefighters, one who had their endorsement, who has moved out since then. We were able to get both our Type 1 engines out the door when that occurred, and then as time went by, more personnel were able to come down and
Get
grab.
engines out?
We had our Type 3 engine in addition to that.
But also, in the winter, we will not have the additional 3 people on 24 hours a day either. Because we only have them
But
for
you'll have
6
the
months.
students down there.
Right, but we'll lose a driver,
Right, yeah.
so we'll have 3 drivers.
How,
And we're on 10-hour days, not 24-hour days.
quick question for me is, we have a 2008 that's fatigued, right?
Yes, we do.
Could we limp that thing along, or potentially limp it along until the next fiscal year? Because I'm just looking at, again, budget consistency, and again, how far does it have to travel, and its purpose? Can we, if we could squeeze out another year, and you, the 2 remaining, Brian and yourself, if I use your name, sorry, but can use what's left, we can still do the build out and hopefully scratch by until 25.
But we also have Sanchez, who's a full-time guy, and a couple of days, we're all 3 on duty at the same time. And we all 3 respond from our houses at night. That's the problem.
Well,
So putting that tank into that 2008 would not allow him to respond from home?
You
if he
can't
was
put it
driving?
in that truck. It won't go in that truck. It won't take, in the 2018, we could put it in there. We could put it in the truck that I currently drive that's sitting out there. I had to give them the specific truck that it's going in to award the grant. It will not go in the 2008 pickup, no way. It won't pull it around town.
but we could use the 2008. I mean, I know it's not ideal certainly, but I mean.
Of course. Yeah.
Because if you see what I'm saying, is I don't, getting the grant, putting the tank in is a good thing.
Yes.
Spending $80,000 when our budget is making my cheeks pucker a bit is not a good thing.
Right.
So,
And I honestly don't believe it'll be 80,000. I think it'll be less because we have radios, so. That's,
Well,
Be a
but
little
it'll
less
come
than
at a different point, and so that it's just kind of, again, I appreciate it because you kind of keep pushing it down a bit. That's good.
I think what Councilmember Palfini is saying is that it would be better in the financial interest of the city to spend the $30,000 at the appropriate time to buy our own tank than to accept a grant that's gonna cost an additional $60,000 to $80,000 in
fine,
expenditures.
we don't have to accept it.
And that's why I'm, trying to figure out, for me,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the math as far as operators, vehicles, things like that, what makes the most sense.
Right.
We went through this whole budget exercise of, we've been in a deficit for years.
Yep.
And we don't have money, so I understand his concern with that. The revenue just isn't there.
That's fine. If, I'm just telling you, if we don't get a command truck for me, I say forget the grant, don't get it, and don't sell the ambulance. Leave it as it is. And they'll
And
just have
now
to
we're
bring
up
an
to
ambulance.
50. But didn't Measure O give us the 40?
And a match, yeah. It gave us $80,000. What it says on my paperwork. It says it gave us 40,000 with a
And I understand
city
it,
match.
but it's a budget and budgets
Yeah,
can be
that's
amended,
fine.
so I just put that forward to you.
That's fine,
so.
and we won't have a four-wheel drive fire apparatus, just so you know.
I,
It's not gonna happen.
I understand,
we're doing
that
the
is a
rebuild.
concern, but I mean,
On the,
We won't have it this winter.
right,
And it
right,
doesn't-
yeah.
We need it in the winter as well as the summer. You gotta have a four-wheel drive vehicle. Because you know how the roads get. So,
I know I have a four-wheel drive.
yeah. So,
We've had 2 fires in the last 10 years, so
yeah.
I-
We do have
I
fires.
think we need to figure out how to get fire trucks.
We do have fires in the winter too. We have flue fires, we have house fires. And I'm just telling you, if I'm on duty on Monday, it takes me 13 minutes to respond to the station in good weather to get a fire truck and then take it to the scene, just so you know. And if
But
I'm the only driver.
you're currently in a command truck that you take home every night, that you can respond from
Correct.
home to the incident, correct?
Yeah, and it takes me 13 minutes in my command truck to get there. Because my watch tells me it's gonna take you 13 minutes to get there. It's
Could I ask a
consistent.
question?
Yeah.
Is that allowed? Okay. For my understanding, the Measure O funds of $40,000 allocated for this fiscal year, those are separate from the city budget, or the city budget that was discussed earlier includes that 40,000 and the rest of the Measure O funds discussed for the other projects approved by Measure O?
We've encumbered that 40,000 for, in the budget for the $266,000 build out on the Type 3 engine.
Okay, so I guess my understanding now is that when you look at spending $80,000 on this, you're accounting for the $40,000 that are approved by the Measure O committee to go to an additional command vehicle is gonna be spent on the Type 3.
Yes.
Okay, okay. I think under our understanding, the thought process was that $40,000 was gonna go to a command vehicle, whether we received a grant for a tank and pump or not. And it was not allocated for the Type 3. So if you look at that, it's about $16,000 on top of the Measure O funds to purchase the truck. Just the command truck, sorry, not the Type 3. So I think that might be where some of the discrepancy is in thought process on where funding is coming from and where it's allocated to, because of the way that Measure O thing.
So there's a couple issues here. One, we keep talking about $40,000 plus an additional 16 to buy the command truck.
And it's
That's not the total cost of that, because we have to buy the extra equipment to finish it out.
I
So
understand.
going forward, regardless of department, when we look at budget expenditures, we don't say we're gonna spend $56,000 on the vehicle and that's the end of it. If we need something for Public Works, for fire, for PD, all of that needs to be included in that cost before it comes to council when it goes for consideration. Because we need to look at the total cost of ownership for anything that we buy. Because we're understating our costs, and that's, I think, one of the contributing factors to the very large budget deficits that the city's been experiencing year over year. The other thing of that is, previously in our uncontrolled budget, the city spent $90,000+ on the Type 3 fire engine chassis, which requires another $267,000, give or take, to finish. And that $267,000 was assumed by the council at the time to be there based on numbers that came from the fire department, because at that time we were in transition with finance directors and there was no proper accounting done on money being spent and versus money coming in, regardless of whether it came from Measure O, from the city general fund, or from strike team revenues after paying for maintenance and salaries. And so I think that's where the boondoggle we're in now is, we're looking at this saying, you know, we should have money set aside, but we've spent 3 or 4 times what we've allocated. And so that was part of the ad hoc committee encumbering that $40,000 that was for Measure O money, because we felt it was important to finish the Type 3 build out. One, because it was impressed upon this council by the fire department for many months since that decision was made to make the purchase, how critical of a vehicle that was. And two, it doesn't make sense to spend $90,000 on equipment that's just sitting there not being used. And so the idea behind the finance committee was to look at that and say, we've got nearly $100,000 invested that's not being utilized. We're being told it's desperately needed. It makes every sense to take every penny we can find to finish that build out and get that done. Now, we're working some magic with it coming in after July 1st. It's been approved. We've got money encumbered. We're looking at selling the ambulance to pay for that. And that is something that I voted for it when we spent the $90,000. I think we really do need that. Now we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay the bill for an additional $60,000 to $80,000 that we didn't plan on for a grant. And that's really what we're trying to get through on this item here on the agenda right now. Is, can we afford to do that? If so, where does the money come from, and does it make sense?
I got something. I'm sorry.
You can see our predicament now.
Yeah.
Well, couldn't we go back to Measure O again next year and get more money for the purchase of that truck?
So I would pose, is it possible to go to Measure O now and ask for, it's what it's for.
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe this is a community need. Nobody's trying to withhold this from the fire department. We're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Exactly, and that's why we're having this lengthy discussion. It's not that we don't want to have fire equipment.
Is it possible to go to Measure O committee and ask?
The woman in the back.
So I would pose that question.
And that, I don't know the answer to that question. He's going to be on staff, know if we can do that.
Mr. Mayor, on that note, I'd like to say this, that the spirit of the Measure O, our sales tax, we're way off base when we start lining up at the trough. This was not designed to. It's designed in case of emergency, contingency, but for every year it was meant for the library and senior citizens, and we went with the 50% rather than the 66% because it's easier to pass. But it was also, the spirit of it was not to have our the city line up. This is for social, and it wasn't earmarked, but it wasn't the spirit of it. But as I can see, we're definitely in that game right now, and I don't know if we've passed the what it was originally designed for. We went to great lengths to get the seniors and in this pass as a complement or a supplement for the library and senior citizens.
And public safety.
And public safety.
And public safety.
As it goes down.
We have never asked for any of that money before this.
This was the first allocation out of that.
Yeah.
public safety at all, or to public works.
Yes, but I'm just
So-
saying, as we start lining, talking about next year, I don't think
And
it's,
I'll point out the first year that it was given to the library was only given, I believe, $16,000, so.
The first year was major purchase was the bus.
Right.
Nobody got anything.
So there you go.
Okay, so that's kind of, we took each step by step, so that's kind of how that all transpired.
None of us look at that as a revenue stream. But what I'm saying is there's a fund there, and it was passed as both senior, library, and public safety. So maybe that would be something to pose to the committee since they have been appointed.
So then that leads to the question of how much money is remaining in that fund currently as of today?
I don't have that information. I don't think I can pull it up on my laptop, unfortunately, but I
So then
can get
my
you-
follow-up question would be, if we tabled the command vehicle to next month, does that affect the grant? The ability to acquire the grant for that tank? I guess that's my question. Is this the decision we have to make right now? Or is this something we can review financially, discuss with Measure O, and look at the fund amounts that are available and then come back to it in a month from now? Or are we at risk of losing the grant entirely if we?
No, we could do the first thing you said.
Okay. I'm trying to find a way that
Gave me
we
three
make this
things, but-
work,
Yeah.
without
We can
shooting
bring the
ourselves in the
command
foot
truck
here.
back, no problem, after we find out if we could go to Measure O and accept the grant.
And I didn't want to interrupt because we do have
Yeah.
someone in the audience that I believe was,
Oh.
had something to add there, so please come up and.
I don't know the correct point of order, but Melissa Westine, I was the
The chair of the Measure O committee.
chair of Measure O,
There you
and
go.
Measure
You guys
O
did great
has
work.
been tossed around a lot, and I appreciate all of the conversation. I think one of the things that I would ask is perhaps to go back into the old paperwork of Measure O might assist the city council. Measure O this year did it much differently and required a lot of paperwork of everyone requesting funds. There were very specific allocations. Some of it I was able to include on our final report because we were given very specific directions the police department gave us for their projections, and each of the other senior services had to give us specific budgets on what we were allocating the funds for. I agree, in the final recommendation, it does say that it's an allocation for vehicles, but there is specific paperwork in what was discussed with Measure O in what we were told by the presenter of where that money was going to go, and I think there probably is documentation backing that up. I will say that Measure O did consider the replacement of the 2008 vehicle. There was specific discussions about it. There were also discussions where we called Chief Mayberry back in to discuss the age of his vehicles. And it was determined by Measure O that the money for the vehicles for the police department was an older fleet, and therefore the money should be there. And the talk about the new rig for the chief, or the new command vehicle, as it's being called, was discussed with Measure O. I don't want to speak on behalf of Measure O, but I will say that my sentiment from that was that we were believing this was going towards engines or services that were going directly to the community. And I think one of the things that was rejected was a brand-new rig for individual non-fire engine vehicles. But what I would say is, and I'm not sure, perhaps we can get direction on it, I do know that Measure O is up for evaluation of how the funds were spent, and our audit was supposed to occur in July of this year, and it has not occurred yet. And so one of the things is if it is referred back by the city in the audit, Measure O could take a look at that and provide specific specifications for the city council in what we were delineating that $40,000 with the $40,000 compromise. And perhaps that is the best way to get the expression of Measure O, is just to send it back in the audit and send a recommendation back to the board, especially if it doesn't sound like the grant is pressing as of this month.
Thank you.
Thanks. However, taking what Melissa said, however, with one other caveat, is that we did already allocate it to the Type 3 fire engine. So
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
we allocated
Yeah.
that $40,000 to the Type 3.
Right.
Okay, again, without going back and asking for more funds, that I'm considering, we already passed the Type 3 fire apparatus. I thought that was a priority. I think Daryl expressed the same thing. I think all of us expressed
Yeah,
the same.
it is.
That is for fire protection.
Yeah.
That is for our community.
Absolutely.
The tanker is also for, I mean, I'm not disputing any of this is for our
Right.
community. Police cars are for our community.
Yep.
Again, I am hesitant on, I've just spent hours along with Daryl. I consumed numbers for dinner and breakfast, and dinner and breakfast, and when we came up with these numbers, it was because that's what, that was the fairness we saw to it. Now we're looking at, we're spending $265,000 additional roughly for the Type 3. We're looking for another $80,000 for a command vehicle. And we just keep pushing, and we're gonna go right back to where we were. So if we're gonna do this, I guess the only option is to table it. Look at Measure O, but that's no decision tonight, and I don't know what that does to your grant.
You can still accept the grant.
We can still accept it.
You could. Yep.
And then you just give it back? You just give
No.
it back if it doesn't happen?
I'll just put it in the back of my truck and drive it around. And I'll be the first responder instead of them.
And it was planned to put in the back of your truck?
Yep. They can keep driving
That's where you're
ambulance.
gonna put it?
Yeah,
Even if you got a new pickup?
yes. And they can continue to drive the ambulance to a fire. That's fine. We can do that. Not a problem. We can do anything.
Is that, that Type 3, it was 90,000 plus 260? Or?
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's 90, the chassis was 80-something thousand
Right.
plus the radios. That's why I asked for 90,000. So I can
Right.
get the radios and charger, and then another 266,000, yes.
Okay.
The total was 366,000.
Do we have to buy a new pickup before January 1, or it has to be electric?
That's only on 5,500 or above.
Oh, okay.
So that chassis that we bought,
Is why we bought it.
that's why we bought it, because it would have had to be electric after that.
That's why Montague bought a new one too?
Yeah.
New truck, fire truck.
That's why we needed to buy that right away.
Right.
Correct. So that's not a
So your
problem.
pickup won't have to be.
Based after this very lengthy discussion, I'm gonna make a motion that we table item C
Item C.
until next month.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving on to item D, administration by motion. Council will consider adopting resolution number 39-2024, appointing Stephen W. Baker as interim city manager and approving the employment agreement.
I'll move to approve
Why we need to go through staff
Resolution.
report and
3920. Do you want to say something?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, David Ruderman, City Attorney for the record.
Are you here?
Do you feel neglected?
The item before you is the two items which will effectuate the appointment of an interim city manager. There first is a resolution that would appoint Steve Baker as interim city manager. The resolution is necessary because Steve Baker is a retired PERS annuitant, so he's limited in the compensation he can receive and the time that he can commit to the position. It also ensures that he doesn't lose his retirement as a result. And then additionally, there is the agreement, the employment agreement itself, and this would be temporary and would only last until the appointment of a permanent city manager. He is limited to receiving the compensation that the city manager received. It's determined based on an hourly basis, but he's an exempt salaried employee, but he does have to keep track of his hours. So what staff it would be requesting would be two. Well, I guess you could do one motion to approve both, or you could do two motions. But there are two items that need to be approved: the resolution and the employment agreement. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
This is 139/2024, and the other one's,
Well, one is the resolution, the other one is approving the employment agreement.
Correct.
This is a separate
Oh, okay.
document,
So the
non-resolution.
correct. So one, you have to have a resolution that we provide to PERS, and then obviously there has to be an employment agreement, which the I believe is prepared for the mayor's signature. Yeah.
so go, I can say something.
This
Do
is
we have discussion?
question and discussion and public comment.
I'll move for resolution number 39-2024, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Weed, California, approving the employment agreement with interim city manager Steve Baker.
Okay, is there any council discussion on the matter?
I'll
And is
second.
there any public comment?
Just for my clarification, so that was a motion to both approve the resolution and the employment agreement?
No, I thought that had to be a second.
Okay,
different
okay,
one.
so that was
Yeah,
just the
okay.
resolution. Okay, got it. Thank you.
I'll second the resolution.
Okay, all those in favor of passing the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And now I will move to approve the employment agreement with Stephen Baker.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
We still need to look at,
we have the consent items, but we've got one more item before we get to the two consent that got moved. And that is item E, discussion only. Council discuss the Weed Arch project and give directions to staff.
So, staff around approximately September of 2023 began working on a design concept for a renovation of the Weed Arch. A graphic designer provided several renditions. Some comments were made by city staff regarding that and possible changes. Some of those changes were made. That design was then presented to Sinorama in Reading, who prepared a metal, an aluminum sign with a vinyl wrap on it. Provided you an attached rendition of what that sign that's already been made looks like. It is down in Reading, waiting to be installed if council so decided and gave staff that direction. Otherwise, I have priced at request what a rewrap of that sign would be, more in line with what the arch currently looks like. So to summarize, a rewrap is going to cost you, it's going to cost the city approximately $4,004 with a $3,600 installation fee. Otherwise, you can choose to use the piece that's already been created. The city has spent approximately $10,000 on that design and manufacture of that sign. So you could choose to do that and have that installed for another $3,600, which either way, that would be the cost to install it, whether it be the already manufactured sign or a rewrap. I'm just looking for direction on how you would like staff to proceed on that.
So this is on here as a discussion item. I'm going to provide some background. So about a year and a half ago, when I joined the board of the Chamber of Commerce had been intending to have the Weed Arch repainted because it had been debilitated over years of weathering. And there was a failure between the old chamber board and the current city staff to come together to make that happen. It was going to require city equipment and road closures. The chamber had had acquired a local painter who was going to repaint it to the original design. After being elected to the council and discussions with council members and staff, staff had recommended at the time that they would go out and get quotations to have a professional come and repaint the arch. Since then, instead of having a repaint of the traditional wheat arch, the former city manager took it upon himself to go out and have this design done. It was fully funded and paid for without review by the planning commission or the city council after notice of separation of employment was given. And I was notified the day before it was supposed to be installed. Nobody in public and nobody from the PD or the fire department had been notified that the streets were going to be closed on Main Street and that this $15,000 expense was going to be made to put this sign up in our city that had not been reviewed. So I took an executive decision as the mayor to stop that install and request it be brought in for discussion tonight. Because one, I had an issue that it was inappropriate that we went from the scope of quoting a repaint to spending nearly $15,000 for this graphic design work. And this is something that I think needs to be discussed once, but clearly amongst the council before we move forward, potentially with the planning commission as it involves signage. And quite frankly, this artwork was, the staff was ignored and it was not presented to council or the commission. And this artwork is very far afield from what our traditional arch had looked like for the last few decades. And I have yet to have a positive response from anyone who has seen this, from staff or the constituency otherwise. Unfortunately, that money was spent and the person that spent that money was authorized to do so without council permission. That's something we'll need to look at as a council going forward. But what we need to, and this is why this is a discussion item, is we can either spend $4,000 and make it correct and preserve the existing arch design that we have and move forward with the install, or we end up eating $10,000 that was spent without any considerations or approvals, and then go back to the drawing board of having it quoted for a repaint. I don't know as far as the longevity of the materials. I think Sinorama told us it was up to 5 years it may last in these weather conditions.
The material's rated at 7 years, the vinyl. The Sinorama will guarantee it for 1 year. The anticipated life is 3 to 5 years, and I don't believe that that's in, looking at the wheat arch receives a heavy amount of weather, particularly from the west side. So I would anticipate it to be on the lower end of that at 3 years.
So as a discussion item, really, the council, do we want to discuss considering $4,000 to rewrap and put our arch back together the way it has been traditionally? Or do we want to accept the $10,000 loss for what has been spent without our approval and move forward with getting quotations to repaint it as it stands now as a steel arch?
Who painted the backside?
The guy before.
Tattoo guy?
No. Oh, what is right now?
Yeah, right now.
It was the tattoo guy.
Yeah, that was downtown.
Yeah, John Utek, and he was the artist that had agreed to
Do the other
donate
side?
to do the paint and as a donation. But that was again several years ago. He has since moved his business out of town.
I don't think he hates us.
I don't think so either. He's with the CSD in Lake Shastina. I talk to him frequently. He's a nice guy. But so we need to either make a decision here because the sign was built. It's sitting at Sinorama, and they're waiting to hear what we're going to do with it.
It's not gonna last.
I don't see where it's going to last long. I am personally appalled and opposed to putting this up in our city. This is.
Well, I don't think it's a joke. But
It's yeah. Thank you. I think that's a professional way to say it. It's a joke. It is at best infringing upon the Lumberjacks insignia from McLeod, California, and at worst it is infringing upon Disney rights for cartoons, and it is not symbolic of our traditional arch. There are a lot of organizations from the Chamber of Commerce to businesses around town that use the wheat arch and its symbolism, because it's part of our culture. And it's part of who we are as a community. And so, again, this was something that, as the mayor, I felt needed to go back to the council for review, because this impacts not just finances, but also the look and feel of our city. And, you know, if we're gonna have discussions at the planning commission and the city council in regards to billboard signs and ordinance reviews, then we definitely need to be looking at the signage that represents our town.
I would like to propose we get the tattoo guy to paint the other side. Prior to anybody painting the other side, I talked to Steve Richardson, who's an artist that most people know from over in McLeod, and he said he's way too old to climb up on anything to paint it, but it needed to be painted with auto paint
Yes.
to stay, and I'm pretty sure that's what the guy used.
Auto paint and clear coat in order for it to
Right.
last.
And the one side looks great. I don't know why he can't do the other side, and then get lights back up, and we.
And that was also something the chamber had discussed, was lights as well. The first step was get the paint done, because that was what was
Right.
desperately needed. But now we have this, aluminum vinyl wrap sign down in Reading that,
I guess they can use it for advertisement. Sell it to
so
somebody
we
else.
need, you know, so if,
Weed, Texas.
and again, this is a discussion item, so we can give direction to staff.
So, if we use what Sinorama has now, and I know the longevity is an issue, what is the additional cost over and above what we've already spent?
$3,600 installation.
And how much for the wrap, though, that they're gonna do?
If you rewrap it, it's a $4,000 wrap and a $3,600 installation.
I don't understand what a wrap is.
$7,600
It's like what I put on the rotary mobile?
Yes, so this is an aluminum cutout, or
That's what
polycarbonate,
this
depending on,
thing is.
depending on materials.
It's aluminum.
So usually you would wrap a polycarbonate or a metal of some kind. So this is an aluminum cutout. I'm presuming it was, you know, water jet or laser jet cut that's wrapped with vinyl. So part of the discussion was, do we, since we've already spent $10,000, do we spend the $4,000 to wrap it to look like the original arch so that it's correct and install it? Or
Oh,
do
I see
we
what you're
scrap
saying.
it, eat the $10,000 and, you know, spend however much paint and or labor would cost to paint it, which is the correct approach for that
You
type of
still
material.
own what's been created, though, so.
Yeah, so we own this joke of a sign, as it's
And
been
there's
put.
no way we don't owe for that one. However,
Isn't it already
there
paid
is
for? Did it already get
a
paid for?
gentleman by the name of Richard Edwards. Most people will probably know him from, I don't know, I'd have to call, I had somebody send me his phone number, that's why I got my phone. I don't usually have a phone out, but, I have a contact number for him. He's the one that usually does a lot of the window graphics, around Christmas time, around Mount Shasta, Weed, Dunsmere, everywhere. He's an artist. The biggest thing that you talk.
Microphone.
Oh, excuse me. The biggest thing we talk about is the longevity, and it's actually the paint, as Daryl has explained, as Mayor Parham has explained.
Daryl's fine.
So if he might be interested, although I don't know if he's still back in, I haven't called him. That's kind of where I left it, and I believe Tim had called Sinorama, so.
So I think at this point, to me, preserving the arch to be correct to the community as we've always had it is the most important thing here. I think that if we go with the rewrap to have it match the original artwork in the install, you know, it's only guaranteed for a year. We should likely get 4 or 5 good years of use out of it, and then we have to look at replacement at that time. And it's a difficult decision to make because we don't know if someone's gonna volunteer time as an artist to paint the existing metal. And I think that if we paid labor, to do that would cost us probably as much as the sign rewrap and install would cost.
I
So-
also have a sign made by Sinorama at my office in Mount Shasta. It is on year 11, although it does not get the wind
Yeah.
Right.
impact. Or, it does get the sun. it goes east to west, so it gets a pretty heavy amount of sun, but,
I'd say call the tattoo guy and have him repaint the other side.
Then, of course, the next question is what to do with discarding the sign.
You mean the one that we've already paid for?
Yes,
we've already
if we
expended
choose
the
to go
funds.
that way, yes.
Send it to Weed, Texas. They might want it.
There's Weed, Wyoming, isn't there, or Montana?
I know, there's Weed, Texas.
So, well, I think you sign around and just keep it in their stock as far as that's concerned, if that's their choice that we not go with.
I don't know if that'll be an option.
No, we've paid for that, so you would need to decide whether it be stored somewhere or, you know, we'll need to pick that up and.
But it's not currently wrapped, is it?
No, it's finished.
It's finished?
It was actually scheduled to be installed. I got a call on Thursday saying, hey, why are we closing Main Street on Friday to install a sign? What do you know about this? And that's where this all came from. Because things were done without discussion with other department heads, especially regarding public safety for police and fire, for closing the Main Street, and things were done without consent of the council. Here we are.
Well, I'm not really fond of the design. The mountain's okay, the mountain part.
So, I think at this point, if we don't have a consensus, I think what we need to do is obviously take delivery and store it at the city yard. And then we can review, you know, if we can find an artist such as Mr. Utek that would be willing to do the paint. Either as a donation or as a quote. Sorry? Well, this was a discussion item, but, is there any public comment, since we still have some public here, in regards to the, Arch graphics? No?
No.
So I will add that if we do put this off, we take possession, we put it off, I can't say that the quote for a redesign, because it was gonna be an in-house design from Signarama, who did not do this design originally. So that may be more, maybe less, probably more, if you decide to do that later.
Have they sent you an image of the design?
No, what their intent would be is they have photographs of the sign that they based the cutout off of the current sign. They can pretty much design that. They didn't want to proceed with having their design department create a design until they had a signed, agreement, so, which I understand. So their goal would be to try to make it as close as possible to what is already there.
Well, if we do it that way, at least we don't throw away what we've already spent, so it would cost us $7,000.
$7,000 to do that, yes.
No matter what, it's gonna cost us 10. That's a given, right?
Yeah, that tends to sunk cost, whether we move forward with the sign rewrap or whether we scrap it and paint the sign.
I just wanted to point out that if you change your mind, decide to go back with a redesign, that quote may be more than it is.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's
okay.
all I was pointing out.
Okay. We're already out 7, or out 10.
10, it was 7,000 manufacturing cost and 3,000 design cost. Because it was not done in-house by Signarama, it was done by an independent designer.
And we're looking, excuse me, and we're basically looking at possibly in 3 years, putting another 10 grand into it for another face?
Or removing it and repainting, yes. We don't know
Okay.
if it will, it was projected to last 5 to 7. We don't know how long it will really last.
Actually, it was projected to last 3 to 5.
Oh, 3 to 5,
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
And it's weed, so it's gonna be 2 to 3.
Only $1,200 a year personally.
And this goes back to the discussion point I had earlier about the departments working together, whether we're closing a main roadway and needing to have that discussion with our public service, between Public Works and Fire PD, or things that have to do with community facade being run across the departments and discussed with the council.
Well, Mr. Mayor, personally, I think going back to the original, what Von Dillman actually created, in the long run, just painting it and keeping up the paint job on it is the way.
That was the original intent as given to staff at that time, yes.
That's what I think should be, I think we should stay with that. You know, I mean, that's what it was designed for. And I think we're gonna be, in the long run, we're gonna be ahead rather than looking at, well, it's 3 years.
When that vinyl starts to tear off.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then once it starts tearing off and weed, it's gone.
Oh, it's on the back table.
The issue
One thing about
becomes the
paint-
cost of the painter.
One thing about paint is it will fade, you know, in time, but you can repaint it.
Yeah.
Well, that one took 40 years to fade.
Yeah.
Properly designed automotive paint with clear coat should last a minimum of 10 years.
Yeah.
I just want to add here, I don't know that this was done with any malintent. I think that the previous staff that did this was trying to accomplish something that had been discussed and no action taken. So whatever we decide tonight, we need to move forward and finish the lights and finish the arch, whatever we decide to do. That's why I think some actions were taken, was because they just felt that it had been discussed and nothing had been done. So I will add that.
I have a question. Was that paid for, possibly thought to be paid for out of that art money? that you
No,
got?
it was not.
You already asked that question?
Yep, this was taken out of the general fund. Currently, as it sits, the city manager is able to spend up to, I think, 40 or 50,000, 25,000 without council approval.
I thought we would change that. Oh, because before it was 100?
But we have an opportunity that we can review the powers and abilities of the city manager going forward, since we'll be looking at that, so. But right now, we
It
need to
is
figure out.
supposed to be budgeted. I mean, the spending authority still has to fall within the budget.
So I would say, let's put a time frame on this. Let's look for a painter and a bid, and give us maybe 10 days to find a painter and a bid. We can't do it in 10 days, then let's move forward with Signorama. The idea, number one, I have a 14-year-old grandson right now. When he was 12, he came through town and he says, "What the hell happened to the sign?" So now it's 2 years later and the comment is still the same. So maybe if we just put a 10-day limit on finding a painter or not, and then if we cannot find a painter to give us a proper price, move to the vinyl. And let's just get her done.
As a member of the public, I don't know if it's possible, but it looks like a sign that could promote at least the look of what Weed wants, but could we not find an alternative use for it, like a child's baseball field, or
That's a good idea.
a school, or
I
something?
like the baseball field idea. The school would probably try to figure out, because it's got writing on it.
But it's gonna be rewrapped, right? So the writing on it doesn't have to remain the same, am I understanding
No, so
that?
The rewrap is extra. We have
the
to
rewrap would be if we decide to move forward with installing it, and we rewrapped it to match the current arch design. Currently, the wrap that you see in the photos is what's physically on the aluminum cutout.
So to change this design on the actual metal, the quote is $4,000.
Yeah, so I don't know,
That's a good idea.
it's an alternative to use something that we have, and I agree with the mayor's comments that, it looks like you're entering Disneyland, not necessarily entering a city, but it's a lot of money just to put somewhere, and even if it's $4,000, if it's a sign for the library, or a sign for public services, or something, even if we would have to pay the money to rewrap it, maybe it would be worth it.
Found it.
Oh, found it. It might be good at the elementary school. Actually, at least the
Be age appropriate.
California funded 19, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what you do.
All right,
Thank you
so
for visiting.
rather than belaboring this, I think
Okay.
we've discussed the item. We will avoid these pitfall issues in the future. I would make a motion that we move forward with getting a quote Well,
You want
this
to
is-
just give direction?
Yeah,
'Cause
I
there's-
would,
this is
I
a
would give
discussion.
direction to staff to go forward with getting a quote for having someone do a professional repaint of the existing sign, including clear coat and lighting. And then we can reach out to several of the entities, such as the elementary school, about possibly donating the existing sign that we erroneously paid for. And perhaps they can put that on their new building there. Maybe the fire department would like one of the halves for their building. We'll find a place for it to go so it doesn't get wasted. But I think I'd start with the elementary school as far as, you know, repurposing the sign, as an in-kind donation. So. And yes, I do agree that we want to make this a timely, that we get this arch repainted and the lights restored, so this doesn't carry on for years like it had in the past.
Put down this phone number if you would,
This is
530.
public, you might want to give that out.
Oh, never mind, I'll do that after. Thank you.
All right, so now we're gonna go
You might want
back
the
to the consent
advertising.
items that we moved to become, next in line, so we'll start with item D, which is fire by motion. Council will consider adopting resolution number 37-2024, surplus of 2014 International Ambulance.
I say we table that, please.
Any discussion amongst council on that?
No, I'm good with tabling it.
Okay,
Public comment?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, table in a second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All right, any opposed? Motion carries. And the last item, item E from the consent that was moved, fire by motion, council will consider authorizing Weed Fire Department to accept the U.S. Department of Interior grant award of $35,204.10.
I make a motion to.
Do we have any further discussion on the item?
Oh, okay.
I think we
You're
should,
gonna get that and just
I-
put it in your truck.
I think we should accept that grant, yes, please.
Okay.
Do we have any public comment on that? All right,
Okay, so no public comment?
no public comment.
I'll make a motion to authorize the Weed Fire Department to accept the U.S. Department of Interior grant award of $35,204.10.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to staff reports, and we'll start with Chief Duncan.
All right, just real quick, we had a really busy month, probably, it might be a record. We had 94 calls this month, which is a lot for us. 4 strike team assignments. We did 148 field mitigation inspections, and sorry I haven't been able to keep up on them quite as much as I'd like to. Half of those are done, they're compliant. 9 of them have returned mails with no forwarding address, and most of them are in Lincoln Heights. I don't know if you guys wanted me to go after them, to weed abate them, and then give them a tax lien, because that's the next step. And also, I have not sent out certified letters to people and give tickets, because all I hear, no offense, all I hear is, if you give me a ticket, you better give the city a ticket, because they haven't done their property. Now, I know Chris is doing it, he's working on it, but I'm just telling you, from the citizen standpoint, I hear this every day. Every day somebody calls me and says, I'll get to my weeds as soon as the city gets to theirs. And I don't know if I can give them a ticket consciously without having the city property done first.
I say hand them paper.
Yep, if that's your direction, I'll do it.
I mean, that's my part in it.
I mean, this, just as a point of order, I mean, enforcement decisions are not council
Yeah.
prerogative. You guys are
Okay.
involved in governance, but
Okay.
the-
Thank you.
this is a
Thanks.
staff.
So, anyway, that's where I'm at with the weed abatement. I'm
That's
trying
my
to work with the
opinion.
people to get it done. So, you know, which is the best option, is to get it done. We also did 46 and a half hours of physical training, 62 hours of firefighter training, and we took Engine 11 to the park at the request of Ken Palafini to spray the kids down. I wasn't there. It was Chief Carter and them, and they said it was a blast. We got a lot of cards back from them, so it was a good time. And We do it every year, and it's a lot of fun, so that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Acting Public Works Director Davis.
Just let council know that the museum is scheduled to get cleaned on the 26th. They are guessing it will take about 3 days to get that completely cleaned. So hopefully they'll be open for September. And right now we do have one person that went and took his drug test and his life scan today to hopefully bring him on the crew once that goes through.
Good job.
Excellent. And to speak to the fire department issue, kudos and thank you to Public Works and the staff for fighting with the insurance company. The holdup was not due to the city and delay on getting that done, and I applaud the city for pushing to get that completed so we can at least get a month in this year. So thank you for making that happen.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question for Chris. Chris, downtown, we haven't had lights, the street lights for a long time. What's the issue?
Nothing has been reported to me. I know every single time that, usually Ken's the one who reports the outages to me. And we usually go out there the next day and take a look at the timers. Nothing has been reported to me as of lately.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Those little green fancy lights?
Yeah. They're not on it.
In the summertime, it's past my bedtime.
You know, it's, I've bbeen through there 9, 10 o'clock at night. There's nothing.
Okay, well, we will take a look
Okay,
at that
thank you.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, on that note, one thing we used to do, it was kind of a standard thing, is Martin would have his police officers report any lights that were out. You know, if they're not, just as far as safety is, I don't know if you do that or
So,
can you?
I can speak to that there was a sergeant that used to do that with a form that he created. That sergeant's no longer a sergeant here. He's sitting here right now, so that's why that got done. I can instruct my staff to go around and do that. That's not something that's normally on their radar to check. That was something that
yes,
hearing council concerns and Public Works issue with being able to identify those because they're not here. They don't, they work during the day primarily. So I can pull that form out of the archives that I have and direct my night crew to do that, yes. But again, it's not something they would think of on their own to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the Pacific Power light poles, such as the one in my front yard, that's not the city. But I can get the number, everybody, you can get the number and call City Hall. No, call Pacific Power.
So actually, you could go online and report, once you get that poll number, because it's what I do constantly, get that poll number, you go online, it's street light outages, and then all you do is type in the location of that pole and that poll number. And you give out just the bare minimum of your information, just in case they have any questions. They will contact you, and they'll go out and fix it. It actually creates a work order for Pacific Power.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chris.
All right, Chief Mayberry.
So speaking for the police department, we had around 2,152 calls for the month. We had 51 cases, 17 arrests. I will say we had one seizure, I believe, of around 50 pounds of cannabis illegally produced. We also had a more recent seizure that will fall in this month, but of 30 pounds of methamphetamine.
Oh, man.
So, the officers, it's a fine line with a small department between focusing on, what's more considered interdiction stuff. That's not something they're focusing on. They do that on occasion. This one just happened upon it. It was a traffic stop for, I can't remember the exact reason, but, a driver didn't have a driver's license and it turned into this. So they are out there, finding bigger things than just, traffic lights or, street lights. So sometimes I need to draw some of the officers back into more community-minded things like street lights. So I will do that. Other than that, I don't believe I have anything else to report. I think we've covered quite a bit of city business tonight.
Nice job. Stepping up for us too.
The,
All right.
the police department kindly found the missing set of bocce balls that went missing from the courts a couple weeks ago too.
I
Thank
will
you.
add on Public Works behalf, as far as the community, hopefully the community realizes the water buffalo trailer that we accepted earlier is going to help them with that. That was the holdup, was the surplus water tank, or water tender. It was at a point where it wasn't safe to operate anymore, and that was part of the holdup on getting the weeds done. So now that they do have that new piece of equipment, they are out there doing that. They are also shorthanded. They had 2 recent retirements, or, people going out the door, so they are working shorthanded. He was speaking to filling one of those positions. That's going to help them out quite a bit as well, so.
My point was trying to, for yourself, with the way you came in and helped us out as far as helping out with the city manager function. You did a great job, and it seems as everything is moving in the right direction. And I think, and also when you get the time for Jill, hang in there, babe. You're doing it. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Thank you, though. You did a great job, Justin.
All right, I know our seating
done.
arrangements are a little different tonight, but Director Porterfield, your report.
So, our auditors finished field work. He's drafting our audit report for 22-23 audit. We're still finishing that one up, so I would expect that soon. Possibly, we may be presenting that next month at council meeting. We're gonna have our kickoff call next week with Springbrook Software, so we can start that implementation. And yeah, just have been real busy trying to get the budget lined out, so that's about it.
Well, and being one of the members from the committee, I do want to thank you for the exhaustive amount of work that everyone in the committee put in, but especially the finance department, and the fact that we're going to move forward with a proper budget for the first time in a long time is very good accomplishment for this city, and I think will set us up for a very positive future. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our city clerk, Ms. Dickey.
No report, but to answer, actually I do. I do have 4 papers were pulled for election. So that's very good news. No incumbents pulled papers, so that will, David reminded me, that does extend the date to the 14th of August, when they can be returned. But to answer Councilmember Tavellaro's question regarding HDL, the process is lengthier than our 1-page application, but it has saved a lot of staff time, and they have streamlined the process as far as HDL business license is concerned. So they do a good service for the city.
And wasn't there something behind that too, where they were checking to make sure?
That is correct. They collect a lot more data than we ever did.
And we've used it. It has
Yes.
been a positive
Yes,
for
it
us,
is.
right? I
Yes,
remember
correct.
that
Yeah.
part of it too.
Yeah.
It's related to sales tax information. They also have the ability to audit, say, somebody who's supposed to be collecting TOT funds. That saves staff a huge amount of time of trying to have to sit down and do that.
I remembered that part of it.
All right. Our city attorney.
I have no report this evening.
We were waiting on pins and needles.
All right, and acting city manager Mayberry, do you have any additional?
I have nothing to add to tonight's conversation.
All right. Well, that is staff reports. Now we're on to adjournment.
I make a motion, that's all we have, so, right? I'll make a motion, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I don't want to
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
That's exactly what I was
I'm
expecting.
gonna have to start being quicker. It was a long night tonight, though. This reminded me of one of our marathons.